Chapter 91. Lu Ping immediately returned to Xianqi Island and asked Master Immortal Lu about it. Although Master Immortal Lu had heard some rumors, he didn't know much about it. Hence, he brought Lu Ping to visit Enlightened Master Chu Xuanqing. Enlightened Master Chu knew a little, but he hadn't experienced the opening of Feiling Island. After telling Lu Ping everything he knew, he asked him to return to Tianling Mountain and look for Enlightened Master Chu Xuanqing. Lu Ping finally found the right person. Enlightened Master Chu Xuanqing told Lu Ping about his participation in the opening of Feiling Island in detail. He warned Lu Ping, Feiling Island isn't as full of treasures as people say. Not to mention how much was destroyed by Fa Xiang Laozu's battle, even Fa Xiang Laozu's search wouldn't leave much behind. Moreover, before Laozu's battle, the sects of the North Sea invaded Feiling Island and plundered it. In addition, for the past 4,000 years, we've been searching the island every 500 years. How many good things could there be? However, because of the large spirit vein, the spirit herbs on Feiling Island will mature once every 500 years. It has become the most important resource on Feiling Island. Therefore, in this battle, both sides will compete on how many spirit herbs their disciples collect. The sect will take 3/4 of the spirit herbs collected. If the disciples have other harvests, the sect will not interfere. What Lu Ping wanted the most right now were spirit herbs. Naturally, he was overjoyed when he heard this. He took the map of Feiling Island that Enlightened Master Chu Xuanqing had drawn from his memory and returned to Huangli Island to prepare. 5 days later, on the second day of the second month, Zhenling's group of 20 early blood condensation disciples flew southwest of Tianling Mountain under the lead of 2 enlightened masters. Originally, Feiling Island could open at any time this year. However, Shui Yen Pavilion and Hai Yen sect's proposal caught the sects off guard, which was why they were in such a hurry. Even with the speed of core forging enlightened masters, it took them a day to arrive above Feiling Island. They randomly found a coral island and landed on it. Lu Ping played with a mid-grade water attribute defensive artifact, the crystal mirror, in his hand, silently familiarizing himself with its properties. This was the preparation the sect had made for the 20 disciples who would enter Feiling Island. This time, Zhenling sect had prepared a middle-grade magic tool, a bottle of superior-grade healing medicine, 3 bottles of superior-grade vitality replenishing pills for recovering spiritual energy, and 3 bottles of China root pills, which were cultivation pills. They were considered as early rewards given by the sect. Lu Ping was quite satisfied, especially with the 3 bottles of China root pills. This temporarily alleviated Lu Ping's shortage of blood condensation realm pills. Out of the 2 perfected masters, one was perfected Master Lu Xianling, a middle-aged woman with a kind expression. The other was perfected Master Guoxianshan, a burly man in his 30s. At this time, the perfected masters of the various sects also arrived with their disciples. The perfected masters of the Songhai sect, Jade Sword sect, and Chongming sect all came forward with their disciples to greet them, instructing their disciples to take care of each other if they met on Feiling Island. At this time, a ray of light flew over from the horizon and landed on a coral island opposite of Zhenling. A tall, skinny old man and a middle-aged man with a cold expression appeared on the island with 10 disciples. It was Xianling sect's group. The tall, skinny old man was Xianling sect's Feng Shutao. He laughed and said, "Lu Xianling, why is a woman like you leading the group? Where's that hypocrite Jiang Xianlin? Did he accidentally get injured in the last battle?" Perfected Master Lu smiled and said, "Senior brother Jiang is a genius. His breakthrough to the Dharma realm is just around the corner. How can he be distracted by such trivial matters? I thank you on behalf of senior brother Jiang, old Taoist Feng." Feng Shutao's expression changed when he heard perfected Master Lu's words. He said, "It's not that easy to break through to the Dharma realm. Maybe he's just using a bamboo basket to fetch water." Perfected Guoxianshan snorted angrily and said, "Old Feng, you're my senior brother Jiang's old rival. You should know best whether senior brother Jiang can break through to the Dharma realm or not." It was perfected Master Jiang Rushui from the Shui Yen Pavilion who quickly interrupted, "Everyone stop arguing. It's almost time. Let's get ready to activate the array at the bottom of the sea, so that these little guys don't have to wait too long." Perfected Master Jiang Rushui spoke slowly and softly like a little wife. Feng Shutao and Guoxianshan did not want to argue anymore, so they both snorted and stopped talking. The 200 cultivators participating in this trip to Feiling Island came from 20 sects or independent clans. Each clan had to send at least 1 core forging perfected master to escort their disciples. At the same time, they were also responsible for activating the array on Feiling Island, even if only one disciple was participating. This was also the minimum requirement for the sects to divide up the 100 spots. As the 30 core forging perfected masters waved their hands, all kinds of spirit stones, spiritual materials, array discs, and other items shone with spiritual light and sank to the bottom of the sea like rain. It was as if these perfected masters already knew the location of the array at the bottom of the sea. Lu Ping probed the bottom of the sea with his divine sense, but there was only seawater. He could not help but sigh at the power of these perfected masters' divine sense. Lu Ping had been diligently practicing the spirit-nourishing technique, but now he had only increased the range of his divine sense by 10 feet, which was 1/40th. He was still far from the peak of the spirit-nourishing technique, which could increase the range of his divine sense by 1/3. After setting up the array, the 30 perfected masters each took a position. Suddenly, a beam of light appeared in each of their hands. The perfected masters flipped their hands, and 60 beams of light penetrated the bottom of the sea. A rumbling sound came from the bottom of the sea. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the sound became louder and louder, gradually becoming deafening. It was as if a behemoth was about to break out of the water. The seawater on the surface of the sea also gradually became turbulent, and the waves grew bigger and bigger. Gradually, they formed a huge wave that was several feet high and rushed towards the coral island. Everyone flew into the air on their magic tools. The shadow at the bottom of the sea grew bigger and bigger, getting closer and closer to the surface. Everyone was looking forward to seeing what the famous Feiling Island looked like. At this moment, the shadow at the bottom of the sea finally broke out of the water and appeared in front of the cultivators. Everyone looked at each other. How was this Feiling Island? This was simply a huge group teleportation array. At this time, Xianling sect's Feng Shutao shouted, "Disciples, quickly enter the teleportation array." The perfected masters of the various sects also ordered their disciples to enter. Lu Ping followed Jinling's group into the teleportation array. The world was spinning and Lu Ping only felt the ground under his feet. He immediately placed the crystal mirror on top of his head, and at the same time, turned his eyes to look around. What entered his eyes was a lush green ruin. The trees on both sides of the road were faintly discernible, but they were still stubbornly alive. Unfortunately, these were ordinary weeds and trees, not spirit herbs. Lu Ping probed with his divine sense and his face immediately lit up. He pointed with his finger, and a sparkling and translucent stone fell into his hand. It was actually a mid-grade spirit stone. Lu Ping was slightly happy. This was a good start. Feiling Island was once the only huge island in the North Sea. According to the records, it was 1,700 miles in circumference. How huge was this? No wonder everyone could only enter through the teleportation array. How could a few dozen perfected masters summon such a huge island? Even Dharma idol Laozu would have a hard time doing this. This made everyone exclaim at perfected Master Ling's boundless arcane energy. Rumor had it that Jinling's camp, Tianling Mountain, also had a legacy left behind by Jinling's only perfected master, Laozu. However, outsiders had no way of knowing what it was. Lu Ping continued to look around, and finally confirmed that this was the foothill of Tsang Mountain to the west of Feiling Island. It was about 100 miles away from the main peak of Feiling Mountain. According to perfected Master Zhang's records, this used to be the location of Feiling Sect's artifact refining hall. In the past, other than the main peak, Feiling Mountain, Feiling Sect had 5 other major peaks. They were the Pill Refining Room, Scripture Pavilion, Artifact Refining Hall, and Spiritual Herb Garden. The teleportation array could only randomly teleport everyone to Feiling Island. As for where they would be teleported to, that depended on luck. At this time, Lu Ping couldn't help but envy the cultivators who were teleported to the Spiritual Herb Garden. However, as long as there was a place with spiritual qi, every sect would open up a place to plant spiritual herbs. It was just that the number and variety of spiritual herbs wouldn't be as many as the Spiritual Herb Garden. As Lu Ping walked towards the main peak of Tsang Mountain, he used his divine sense to check his surroundings to see if he could find any spiritual herbs or spiritual materials. At the same time, he also paid attention to the Grand Restriction Array. Because this Grand Restriction Array was hastily set up by Feiling Sect's Laozu, it had been damaged quite a bit. Therefore, after it was set up, not only would Feiling Island sink to the bottom of the sea, but the island was also filled with many restrictions. If one were to accidentally touch the array, they could be trapped for a period of time and then break free. If it were serious, they could only be imprisoned inside and wait for death. If they encountered a powerful killing array, they could turn their bones into ashes on the spot. Lu Ping shrunk his divine sense to 200 feet. This way he might miss some things due to the reduced range of his divine sense. However, with his divine sense shrunk, Lu Ping's probing power became more subtle, allowing him to discover some relatively hidden restrictions. Along the way, Lu Ping had already avoided several hidden restrictions. One of the restrictions had an astonishing power. Lu Ping had picked up a fragment of a middle-grade magic tool on the way and threw it on top of the restriction. The fragment immediately broke into 7 or 8 fragments, breaking it even more thoroughly. This made Lu Ping secretly shocked. No wonder enlightened Master Jiang said that a large portion of the cultivators who died on Fei Ling Island were imprisoned or killed by the island's restrictions. Lu Ping also saw a lot of corpses on the way. Most of them were badly decayed. It was hard to tell whether they were Fei Ling sect cultivators or North Sea cultivators. In any case, there were no storage pouches on them, so Lu Ping burned all the corpses with fire spells. Although he cultivated a water-type cultivation method, it was not a problem for him to use a small fire-type spell. He also collected a lot of abandoned magic tools and fragments. He planned to bring them back to Chenlian to see if they were still useful. In any case, he had a lot of storage pouches with him. In addition, there were some spiritual herbs. He collected a lot of 100-year-old spiritual herbs used to refine blood refining realm pills, but there was not a single 500-year-old spiritual herb. There were also a few spirit stones. Unfortunately, they were all low-grade spirit stones. Lu Ping picked them up, but it was better than nothing. This trip to Fei Ling Island had a total of 18 days for 200 cultivators to explore. Although there was enough time, Fei Ling Island was also incomparably huge. Fei Ling sect had been operating on it for tens of thousands of years, so it was unknown how many hidden places there were. The place Lu Ping went to was the peak of Tsang Mountain, where the artifact refining hall was located. There was a branch of Fei Ling Mountain spirit vein at the top. Outside the artifact refining hall, there were 2 small spiritual herb gardens. He did not know the current situation. Chapter 92. Just as Lu Ping was carefully inspecting his surroundings and slowly walking towards the refining hall, he suddenly heard the sound of something flying behind him. Lu Ping turned around and saw a cultivator flying in the air. When the cultivator saw Lu Ping walking slowly on the ground, he looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. In the blink of an eye, he overtook Lu Ping and flew towards the main peak of Tsang Mountain. Lu Ping shook his head. Looking at the cultivator's clothes, he should be from a sect that rose up in the last few hundred years. No wonder he didn't know that flying was forbidden on Fei Ling Island. When Fei Ling Island was first opened, almost 50 out of 200 blood condensation cultivators died to the forbidden array in the sky. Sure enough, when the cultivator was just a mile away from Lu Ping, he heard a shrill scream. Lu Ping looked up and saw that the cultivator in the air had been split into 7 or 8 pieces and was falling to the ground. Lu Ping continued to move forward calmly, using his divine sense to scan his surroundings. Finally, he arrived at the place where the cultivator died. He found that the space here was fluctuating violently. It was obviously a huge forbidden array that was directly connected to the sky above Fei Ling Island. Lu Ping couldn't help but feel sorry for the unlucky cultivator. He didn't even notice such an obvious array. Obviously, he didn't even have time to scan with his divine sense. Lu Ping carefully looked around. After confirming that there was no danger, he put away the cultivator's interspatial pouch and opened it. Other than 3,000 spirit stones and a bottle of medicinal pellets, there were also 2 mid-grade mystic instruments, some freshly harvested 100-year spirit herbs scattered around the interspatial pouch, and 2 wooden boxes containing 2 500-year spirit herbs. Lu Ping thought to himself that this person was quite lucky to find 2 blood condensation spirit herbs in the outskirts. However, he was too careless and didn't know much about Fei Ling Island. Lu Ping continued to walk towards the main peak of Tsang Mountain. Along the way, a joyful expression appeared on his face. He shook the spirit beast storage bag and a spirit beast the size of a puppy and fat like a meatball appeared in front of Lu Ping. Debao's eyes were blurry as he looked around in confusion. Obviously, he had not yet recovered from the new environment. Lu Ping checked with his divine sense and confirmed that Debao had indeed reached the 4th layer of the blood refining realm. This would be a great help to Lu Ping's trip to Fei Ling Island. Lu Ping fed Debao one of the blood purification pills he had refined and told it to look around him, but not too far away. The spirit-seeking mouse was only sensitive to areas where spiritual qi gathered on the ground. Now that Debao had reached the 4th layer of the blood refining realm, he wondered if he would be able to display an even better detection ability. Sure enough, Debao followed Lu Ping's instructions and dug a half-foot deep hole not far behind Lu Ping. Using its beak, it took out a mid-grade spirit stone. This made Lu Ping very happy. Debao's detection ability had indeed improved. It could sense things buried in shallow areas. When they reached the main peak of Tsang Mountain, Debao found a total of 3 mid-grade spirit stones and several low-grade spirit stones for Lu Ping. He also found a lot of broken magic tools and a 500-year-old spirit herb hidden behind a boulder. According to enlightened Master Jiang Xuanlin's records, there were 3 small spirit herb gardens on the main peak of Tsang Mountain. There were many spirit herbs used to concoct blood condensation realm spirit herbs. 500 years had passed, so these spirit herbs should have matured. Lu Ping first came to a spirit herb garden. These spirit herb gardens were usually protected by small array formations. Before Lu Ping could find the entrance, a flash of lightning appeared and blasted a large hole in the ground in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping looked up and saw that a flying feather sect cultivator had already arrived at the spirit herb garden. This cultivator was holding a small round mirror that flashed with lightning. He said to Lu Ping, "This place has been claimed by me. Fellow Taoist, please leave." Lu Ping was stunned, but he didn't want to argue with him. Finding spirit herbs was more important, so he walked towards another spirit herb garden. When the flying feather sect cultivator saw the direction Lu Ping came from, his expression changed. Clearly he was very familiar with Fei Ling sect's situation. When he used his divine sense to scan Lu Ping, he discovered that Lu Ping was only a second-layer blood condensation realm cultivator. He couldn't help but smile sinisterly. He bent down to collect the spirit herbs in the spirit herb garden. This time Lu Ping's luck was pretty good. The second spirit herb garden wasn't taken by other cultivators. Lu Ping took out his flying swallow sword and attacked the array formation outside the spirit herb garden. In an instant, the array formation outside was cut open for Lu Ping to enter and exit. This spirit herb garden was less than half an acre in size. Other than a large number of century-old spirit herbs, there were about 100 stalks of 500-year-old spirit herbs. Moreover, they were all matured. This made Lu Ping very happy. He opened the jade box he brought with him and carefully collected the spirit herbs, sorting them into different jade boxes. After looting all the spirit herbs in the spirit herb garden, Lu Ping scattered the seeds of the matured spirit herbs in the garden according to his usual practice. This was for the next cultivator who came to Fei Ling Island to collect them when it opened. He had to get to the last spirit herb garden as soon as possible. Otherwise he wouldn't have enough time. After Lu Ping hurriedly tidied up the spirit herb garden, he came out of the array formation that was about to recover. He felt a slight dark wind blowing towards him. If not for Lu Ping's double divine sense, he might not have noticed it. A crystal mirror flew out from Lu Ping's body and grew to 3 feet in size. With a crisp ding sound, Lu Ping blocked the incoming object. A 3-inch needle-shaped magic artifact flew back and landed in the hands of a cultivator about 20 feet to the left of Lu Ping. Lu Ping turned around and saw that it was the flying feather sect cultivator that he saw in the first spirit herb garden. He had an invisibility talisman on his body. No wonder Lu Ping didn't notice him at first. Now that he was using the magic artifact, his magic energy fluctuated and revealed his figure. The flying feather sect cultivator clearly didn't expect Lu Ping to block his sneak attack unscathed. He was stunned for a moment and cursed in his heart. "Brat, you're quite lucky to be able to block this needle. But your luck ends here." As he said that, he took out his small round mirror that could stimulate lightning. A bolt of lightning shot towards Lu Ping. The lightning struck the crystal mirror, and Lu Ping felt a numbing sensation in his magic energy. Although it was faint, it was real. This made Lu Ping alert. Not to mention that the other party's cultivation was higher than his. The Flying Feather sect was also a large sect in the Northern Sea. The other party was able to stand out among the many third-layer blood condensation realm cultivators in the sect, so he naturally had his merits. Lu Ping took out his flying swallow sword and said, "Are you going to kill me and rob me?" The Flying Feather sect cultivator chuckled and said, "That's right. I can also help our friend from Shenling sect to have one less competitor." Lu Ping laughed and said, "You're quite direct." As soon as he finished speaking, he used the stone-piercing sword art and slashed towards the other party. The Flying Feather sect cultivator didn't expect Lu Ping's counterattack to be so sharp. This wasn't the kind of magic energy a second-layer blood condensation realm cultivator should have. At the same time, he realized that Jinling must have his own abilities to be able to become one of the 20 cultivators who entered Fei Ling Island with a second-layer blood condensation realm cultivation. He didn't think that Lu Ping was someone who relied on the help of his sect's elders to make a fortune here. After realizing this, the Flying Feather Sect cultivator hurriedly took out a mid-grade magic artifact to protect himself. At the same time, he released his needle-shaped magic artifact to surround Lu Ping, waiting for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. Unfortunately, it was too late for the Flying Feather Sect cultivator. Lu Ping raised his right hand and the goose feather blades flew up again. His divine sense, which was twice as strong as that of a cultivator of the same realm as him, came into play at this moment. He activated the Raging Waves Crashing Shore Sword Art. The two sword arts worked together and instantly tore apart the Flying Feather Sect cultivator's protective magic artifact. As the Flying Feather Sect cultivator cried out in alarm, several talismans flew out from his hands. Some transformed into wooden shields, some transformed into stone walls, and some transformed into offensive spells. All of them blocked Lu Ping's sword and blade waves. However, all of them were destroyed by Lu Ping without exception. The Flying Swallow Sword flashed and the Flying Feather Sect cultivator's heart was pierced. With a loud explosion, the Flying Feather Sect cultivator's body was reduced to ashes. This was the result of the collapse of his core space. Lu Ping sighed inwardly. Most cultivators would activate the power of the condensed blood bead in times of crisis. Some would even choose to self-destruct the condensed blood bead or destroy their core space in order to gain a final chance to counterattack. Therefore, when cultivators died, they would rarely leave behind the condensed blood bead. The reason why Lu Ping obtained the Green Sea Snake and Xiao Shiping's condensed blood bead was because neither of them believed that they would die under the sword of a blood-refining realm cultivator. Naturally, they would not choose to perish together, which would only benefit Lu Ping in the end. Lu Ping picked up the scattered artifacts and storage pouches of the Flying Feather Sect cultivator and turned to look not far away. He said, "You've been watching for so long. Could it be that you're planning to be the fisherman in the end?" A cultivator wearing the uniform of the Sea Flame Sect walked out from behind a boulder on the west side of the spiritual herbal garden. He smiled awkwardly at Lu Ping and said, "I happened to pass by this place by accident. When I heard the sounds of battle, I rushed over to see if I could persuade the two sides to stop fighting and make peace. I didn't expect fellow Taoists to display your might. I didn't manage to stop you in time. I'm ashamed." Naturally, Lu Ping did not believe his nonsense. He said expressionlessly, "Oh, if that's the case, you're going to stand up for him?" The Sea Flame Sect cultivator took a step back and said cautiously, "Fellow Taoist must be joking. Since there's nothing else for me to do here, I'll take my leave." Without waiting for Lu Ping's response, the cultivator hurried back the way he came. Lu Ping couldn't stop him in time. He could only let the cultivator leave. Then he walked towards the third spiritual herbal garden. On the way, Lu Ping looked through the loot of the Flying Feather Sect cultivator. There were more than 8,500-year-old spiritual herbs, more than 20 mid-grade spirit stones, and 2 bottles of blood condensation realm cultivation pills in the 30 boxes. There was also the small round mirror that could shoot out lightning and the needle-shaped artifact that was used to attack Lu Ping. Lu Ping also had a needle-shaped artifact before. After the blood sacrifice, he used it to kill a Xianling Sect second-layer blood condensation realm cultivator during the battle on Shenqi Island. After that, that needle-shaped artifact was also destroyed. Now that it was a mid-grade artifact, its quality was obviously much better than the previous one. The third spiritual herbal garden was already empty. The Sea Flame Sect cultivator must have gotten there first. This made Lu Ping very angry. Obviously, there were many cultivators who were familiar with Feiling Island. He had to speed up. Chapter 93. Lu Ping looked at the huge ruins in front of him. This was the ruins of Feiling Sect's refining hall. The broken walls above the ruins seemed to be telling the story of Feiling Sect's prosperity in the past. Lu Ping spent the whole day searching that Song Mountain. Although he had some harvest, it was a pity that it was not as good as the harvest in the spiritual herbal garden. Therefore, he decided to come to the ruins of the refining hall to take a look. Lu Ping walked in the middle of the ruins hoping to find something. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. He wanted to pay homage to these magnificent ruins. After all, it was such an important place. Every cultivator who entered Feiling Island would come to explore it, so he was afraid that he would not find anything. DeBeo, on the other hand, was running around like a meatball, kicking up layers of dust. His originally earthen yellow fur was now the color of the earth. From time to time, DeBeo would find 1 or 2 magic tool fragments from the ruins and give them to Lu Ping. After receiving Lu Ping's praise, he was very excited. Just as Lu Ping walked to the middle of the ruins, something in Lu Ping's storage bag suddenly trembled. Lu Ping's heart moved. He looked around and saw only desolation. Only then did he take out a huge jade box. Lu Ping opened the jade box. Inside, a blue flame was swaying. It was Lu Ping's trump card, the Azure Spirit Fire. Lu Ping had already refined this spirit fire. However, because he cultivated a pure water attribute cultivation method, he did not keep it in his body. Instead, he carried it in a spiritual storage box. At this moment, the Azure Spirit Fire slightly trembled. Lu Ping's mind was connected to it. He knew that this was a reaction between the same kind of spirit fire. Suddenly, his spirit was shaken. Could it be that there was a hidden secret room here with a heaven and earth spirit fire? After all, this was Fei Ling Sect's refining hall. It was normal to have a heaven and earth spirit fire. Following the blue spirit fire's senses, Lu Ping came to the back of a palace in the ruins. This place looked like the back of the palace. Here, the blue spirit fire's senses were even more intense. However, Lu Ping searched the entire back of the palace and found nothing. Just as Lu Ping was pondering where this feeling came from, De Bao suddenly discovered something in the corner of the back room. Lu Ping hurriedly rushed over and saw De Bao walking around in the corner, using its claws to scratch the ground from time to time. However, this was the refining hall, and the stone slabs on the ground were all made of rough green steel stone, so how could De Bao dig it? Lu Ping looked carefully in the corner, but he still couldn't see anything. He used his divine sense to explore, and found that there was still a slight fluctuation of spiritual qi on the ground. Lu Ping took out a flying sword and pried open the stone slabs in the corner. A small basement appeared in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping carefully walked down. The discovery in front of him immediately made him ecstatic. This basement was piled with a large amount of spirit materials. Profound iron, fine gold stone, fire copper or green crystal stone, thousand-year peach wood, spotted thunder bamboo, spirit willow branch, water spirit bead, wind singing stone, cold jade stone, thunder rumbling stone, and so on. The spirit materials used to refine mid and upper grade magic tools were neatly piled inside, almost taking up a third of the basement. However, although there were many types of spirit materials, they were lacking in quantity. There were only about one or two of each type. Even so, Lu Ping was very satisfied. Among them, there were 4 kinds of spirit materials that were on the same level as deep-sea cold iron. They were used to refine top-grade magic tools. They were deep-sea cold iron, thousand-year lightning pine spirit wood, thousand-year water spirit jade bead, and square spirit stone. In addition, there were 2 kinds of spirit materials that Lu Ping didn't recognize. However, the powerful spiritual qi fluctuations contained in them were above the 4 kinds of spirit materials used to refine top-grade magic tools. Lu Ping knew that these 2 kinds of spirit materials weren't simple, so he put them together with the 4 kinds of spirit materials used to refine top-grade magic tools in his personal storage bag. As for the rest of the spirit materials, Lu Ping didn't stand on ceremony and put them all in his own storage bag. Lu Ping originally thought that this was a warehouse for storing spirit materials. However, these spirit materials were simply piled up. They weren't stored in storage bags like Jinling's blood condensation bank. Sure enough, after Lu Ping put away these spirit materials, there was only a furnace left in the middle of the basement. This should be a place that Fei Ling sect cultivators used to practice refining tools. As for why it was so mysterious, Lu Ping didn't know. At this time, the Azure Spirit Fire's reaction was getting stronger and stronger. Clearly, the thing that made the Azure Spirit Fire react was inside the furnace. Lu Ping felt strange. 4,000 years had passed. Even if it was a heaven and earth spirit fire, it should have lost the support of spiritual qi and been extinguished. Was there something strange? Lu Ping carefully opened the furnace and saw a bean-sized fire candle emitting a faint light. It seemed as if it would be extinguished at any time. Lu Ping hurriedly crushed the 8 mid-grade spirit stones and the scattered spiritual energy flowed towards the fire candle. Only then did the fire candle flicker slightly, and the light it emitted brightened the cauldron by a few notches. Lu Ping carefully took out the spirit gathering plate from the cauldron. Only then did he realize that there was a collapsed spirit vein under the cauldron. It must have been destroyed during the battle on Fei Ling Island. Even so, the residual spiritual energy still preserved the fire seed until now. Lu Ping placed 16 mid-grade spirit stones in the spiritual gathering plate. Only then did the fire candle in the middle sway, as if it had suddenly gained life. This fire candle's vitality was greatly damaged. It seemed that it would take at least 1 or 2 years of careful nurturing to recover. Lu Ping could already confirm that this was a heaven and earth spirit fire. However, Lu Ping did not know much about heaven and earth spirit fire. When this heaven and earth spirit fire recovered, he should be able to find out more about this heaven and earth spirit fire. The furnace used for smithing was actually a high-grade mystic instrument, which surprised Lu Ping a little. Although smithing furnaces weren't as precious as alchemy furnaces, they were still extremely valuable among mystic instruments of the same grade. He decided to give it to Chen Lian as a gift in the future. He believed it would be a pleasant surprise. Lu Ping spread out his divine sense and once again explored the basement. However, he discovered that there were words on the walls of the basement. He quickly went over to take a look. There were only a few words such as, cultivate in tool refining, I will become stronger, surpass Jiao Yuqiang, make those who laugh at me shut up, and so on. This should be a place where a tool refining cultivator of the Flying Feather sect, who was not welcomed in the tool refining hall, worked hard to become stronger. This also explained why the tool refining room was placed in such a secret place. On the other side of the wall, Lu Ping discovered a tool refining diagram. It recorded a secret technique of tool refining. Lu Ping was not proficient in tool refining and did not know whether this secret technique called Spirit Fire Smelting Purification Technique was precious or not. However, he still used a jade slip to copy the diagram on the wall. After thinking about it, he used a flying sword to cut off the diagram on the wall. It was a secret technique. Since everyone knew about it, why would it still be called a secret technique? Because of the discovery of the secret underground room, Lu Ping spent another day carefully examining the ruins of the tool refining hall. De Bao had also lost half a kilogram of meat due to Lu Ping's incitement. Unfortunately, this kind of harvest was not something that could be obtained frequently. In desperation, Lu Ping could only take the dozen or so broken magic tools and low-grade spiritual materials that he had harvested today and walk with De Bao to the incense furnace mountain, where the pill refining room was located. It was not that Lu Ping did not know the path to the spiritual herbal mountain, where the spiritual herbal garden was located. Lu Ping knew that the spiritual herbal garden was the goal of all the cultivators who entered Feiling Island. He was already 2 days behind, and by now, more than half of the spiritual herbal mountain had already been harvested. He would be too late. Moreover, the incense furnace mountain was the closest to White Mountain, even closer than the central Feiling Mountain. Moreover, the incense furnace mountain was the location of the pill refining room. Apart from the spiritual herbal mountain, it was the largest planting ground for spiritual herbs. Going there now was much more cost-effective than rushing to the spiritual herbal mountain. Lu Ping, who had just walked down White Mountain, suddenly stopped. His double-layered divine sense once again allowed Lu Ping to detect danger. About 60 meters in front of him, there was an array that had just been set up. The strange flow of spiritual energy caused by the array alerted Lu Ping. Someone was plotting against him. Then he heard a clapping sound. Fellow Taoist Junling, you have a keen sense. The cultivator from the Haiyan sect that he met on White Mountain walked out. At the same time, 3 other cultivators came out. The 4 of them stood in 4 different directions, surrounding Lu Ping in the middle. Lu Ping looked at the 4 cultivators around him. 2 of them were from the Haiyan sect, while the other 2 were from the Shuiyan Pavilion. The Haiyan sect and the Shuiyan Pavilion were large sects in the North Sea Alliance. Now, it seemed that the 2 sects had a tacit understanding with each other. Just the fact that the disciples of the 2 sects were willing to work together to ambush him showed that the relationship between the 2 sects wasn't simple. Lu Ping looked at the cultivator from the Haiyan sect and asked, "It's you?" The cultivator from the Haiyan sect smiled evilly. "That's right. I know that fellow Taoist isn't an ordinary cultivator. Your magic power is profound and you have probably comprehended the realm of force. However, you are only at the 2nd level of the blood condensation realm. The 4 of us are the best among the 3rd level of the blood condensation realm. With the 4 of us working together, I don't believe that we can't defeat you. It's just that you were able to detect the formation set up by junior sister Wang Huimin from the Shuiyan Pavilion, which surprised us quite a bit. I wonder if fellow Taoist can explain it to us?" Suddenly Lu Ping leaped into the air. The flying swallow sword danced like a sea swallow on the crest of a wave, leaving a trail of splashes in its wake as it pounced towards the Haiyan cultivator. "You will know when you reach the ground." The cultivator from the Haiyan sect was already prepared. He held a feather fan in his hand and waved it at the flying swallow sword. A firebird instantly flew out and screeched as it pounced towards the flying swallow sword. At the same time, he took out a small bell to protect himself. He shouted, "Junior brothers and sisters, this person has at least 200 stalks of 500-year-old spirit herbs. Let's attack together and kill him." The cultivator from the Haiyan sect shouted, and the other 3 immediately surrounded Lu Ping. In the sky, a flying sword, a red silk, a flying spear, and the flaming fan in the High-Yen sect cultivator's hand attacked Lu Ping at the same time. Lu Ping raised the crystal mirror above his head. Immediately the mirror split into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8 and more, until there were 128 six-sided crystals. They joined together to form a huge crystal ball that wrapped around Lu Ping and blocked the attacks of the 4. The 4 surrounded Lu Ping and attacked wildly. Lu Ping tried his best to block, but many of the attacks still hit the crystal ball. Chapter 94. Lu Ping was indeed at a disadvantage right now and was trying his best to resist. However, the 4 cultivators from the Ocean Flame sect and the Mistwater Pavilion did not dare to go all out. The leading cultivator from the Ocean Flame sect had seen how Lu Ping killed the cultivator from the Flying Feather sect. He knew that Lu Ping still had some tricks up his sleeves, so he reminded his companions to fight steadily and consume his magic power. In fact, Lu Ping had several methods to instantly change the situation. For example, he had 2 talisman treasures. If he used any of them, he could immediately break the stalemate. However, those were life-saving treasures. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Lu Ping was not willing to use them. Besides, those were not the true display of his strength. Right now, Lu Ping wanted to rely on his strength to fight against these 4 people. However, Failing Island was filled with danger. Moreover, it would take a lot of time to collect spirit herbs. If this battle dragged on for too long, the benefits might be taken by others. Therefore, Lu Ping hesitated on which method to use to end this battle. At this time, the only female cultivator present, Wang Huimin from the Mistwater Pavilion, suddenly threw out a dozen spirit stones. The spirit stones flew in different directions, and at the same time she threw out some spiritual materials. Lu Ping knew that they were spiritual materials used to set up arrays. This woman wanted to set up an array? However, Lu Ping was a little surprised. He had never encountered such a method of fighting. Wang Huimin threw another dozen spirit stones at a spot a few dozen feet in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping suddenly realized that the other party was trying to lure the previously set up array over. How could Lu Ping, who understood the reason, let her have her way? Lu Ping fiercely used the Flying Swallow Sword's wave-stopping flying boat from the stone-piercing sky sword art, forcing the surrounding magic treasures to pause for a moment. Then the Flying Swallow Sword was immediately taken back by Lu Ping. Just when everyone was puzzled, 2 sword lights that soared into the sky swept towards the 4 people from the Ocean Flame sect and the Water Mist Pavilion like 2 flood peaks that broke through a dam. A pair of male and female soaring swords, one at the front and one at the back, was precisely the move of the raging waves hitting the shore sword technique. The rear wave surpasses the front wave. The Mistwater Pavilion cultivator using the flying spear was caught off guard and only felt a huge wave slapping his flying spear away. Immediately after, another huge wave smashed his defensive artifact into smithereens. Just as he was about to turn around and retreat, the 3rd huge wave came sweeping over. Immediately he felt his head become light and the world spin. He was actually able to see the scenery behind him and subsequently lost consciousness. The other 3 people's hearts sank when they saw Lu Ping kill one of their people with a flip of his hand. The leading Ocean Flame sect cultivator shouted, "This person is powerful. What other trump cards do you have? If you don't use them now, when are you going to use them?" The other 2 people's expressions changed. The Ocean Flame sect cultivator gritted his teeth and spat out a mouthful of blood on his flying sword. The flying sword immediately glowed red and blocked one of the flying swords. At the same time, he patted the spirit beast pouch on his waist and a blood condensation realm crocodile appeared in front of him. It quickly crawled towards Lu Ping. This cultivator was quite famous among the blood condensation realm cultivators of Ocean Flame sect because of this blood condensation realm spirit beast. The 3-meter-long crocodile moved very quickly. In the blink of an eye, it had crawled tens of meters and arrived in front of Lu Ping. It lowered its head and rammed Lu Ping's crystal ball. The crystal wall immediately shook. The crocodile then turned its body and slammed its huge tail against the crystal wall. The crystal ball shook even more violently. In addition to the continuous attacks from the others, the crystal ball started to shake. The leading cultivator was overjoyed and said, "Just a little more and this guy's tortoise shell will break. When that happens we will all be rich." Lu Ping's face darkened. He wanted nothing more than to cut off the tongue of the leading cultivator. When the other 2 heard this, their spirits rose and they increased the intensity of the attacks with their magic treasures. A cloud of smoke rose from the array that Misty Water Pavilion's Wang Huimin had set up. It slowly drifted towards Lu Ping. Obviously, the array was moved by Wang Huimin. Lu Ping's expression changed. He glanced at the smoke in front of him. The soaring wing sword suddenly turned and slashed through the red silk blocking its path. It rushed towards Wang Huimin. Wang Huimin was shocked and quickly recalled the red silk. At the same time, she threw out a talisman which turned into an earth wall. Together with the defensive magic treasure above her head, they blocked the soaring wing sword's attack. The other Ocean Flame Sect cultivator saw this and quickly flew over with his magic treasure to block the soaring wing sword with Wang Huimin. Suddenly, the soaring majestic sword drew an arc in the air. The Ocean Flame Sect cultivator's flying sword suddenly fell under the control of a strange power. Like a man falling into a river, the flying sword was swept forward by the floodwaters as it smashed towards Wang Huimin's defensive magic artifact. The Ocean Flame Sect cultivator's mind flashed with a realm he heard from his sect's senior immortal, borrowing power. Just as the Ocean Flame Sect cultivator lost control of his magic treasure, the returning soaring wing sword and the female sword converged, forming two sword waves that rushed towards him. The cultivator from the Ocean Flame Sect turned pale with fright and took out his spirit beast pouch again. A huge sea turtle suddenly appeared in front of him. The hard turtle shell blocked the female sword that had just broken through the defensive artifact. With this delay, the cultivator from the Ocean Flame Sect quickly retreated. However, he suddenly felt a chill in his chest. It was a flying needle that had pierced his heart. Just as the Ocean Flame Sect cultivator was in disbelief, he heard a crisp kacha sound. Under the double attack of the leading cultivator and the crocodile, Lu Ping's defensive magic treasure, the crystal mirror, had cracked. The leading cultivator looked happy. His tightly clenched hands suddenly shone with red light. A flame soared into the sky and turned into a fire bird. After a long cry, it pounced towards Lu Ping. Treasure talisman. Lu Ping's expression turned serious and a white jade charm appeared in his hand. As he infused his arcane energy into the charm, a faint and ordinary sword light rose up and slashed the fire luan apart. The sword light didn't slow down and continued slashing towards the cultivator leading the group. When the leading cultivator saw that Lu Ping also had a treasure talisman, and the quality was clearly higher than his own, his relaxed expression suddenly became bitter. He had no choice but to raise the treasure talisman in his hand again. A fire bird soared into the sky and blocked the sword light. At this moment, a yellow light flashed in Lu Ping's hand. 3 huge stones appeared above the leading cultivator's head. The first stone smashed his defensive magic treasure. Under his horrified eyes, the other 2 stones smashed him into meat paste. His last thought before his death was, he actually has 2 treasure talismans. The second treasure talisman was the huge stone treasure talisman that was returned to him by the sect as a reward. Lu Ping, who had used the treasure talisman twice, threw out 5 water shield talismans and blocked the scattered magic power after the clash between the fire bird and the sword light. At this moment, a thick fog swept past and wrapped Lu Ping within it. The instant Lu Ping fell into the array, he saw Wang Huimin of the Water Mist Pavilion turn around and run. This array was only a type of auxiliary illusory array that Wang Huimin had hastily set up. It caused the vision and divine sense of the cultivators that fell into the array to be obstructed and slowed down, giving the cultivators outside the array an opportunity to take advantage of. But Wang Huimin knew that according to the strength Lu Ping had displayed, this array would only be able to trap him for a short while. If she was left alone, she would absolutely be unable to kill Lu Ping before the array was broken. So she could only run. Just when she'd just run 300 m away, she saw a piece of iron fly up from within the array. The iron piece flew above the array and suddenly transformed into an iron seal that was 10 m tall, 10 m long and 10 m wide. At the bottom of the seal were 2 powerful and large words, landslide. The large seal fiercely descended, causing a wave of rumbling to echo out. The ground shook along with it, and the fog within the array instantly vanished. Lu Ping's vision cleared up and he saw Wang Huimin, who had already fled 300 m away. Under the siege of 4 people, Lu Ping had used all his abilities, so how could he let her go? He slapped a blood escape talisman on his body, and Lu Ping suddenly appeared 30 m behind Wang Huimin. Wang Huimin, who had lost her head out of fear, seemed to want to say something, but Lu Ping's sword flew over and beheaded her. Looking at the mess on the ground, Lu Ping spread out his divine sense. After confirming that there was nothing suspicious in the surroundings, he swallowed a high-quality spiritual recovery pill to recover his spiritual energy. At the same time, he collected the 4 people's interspatial pouches and the undamaged magic tools that were scattered around. The crocodile demonic beast had also died when the Ocean Flame Sect cultivator died. Clearly, the crocodile was a beast slave controlled by the cultivator's divine sense. On the other hand, the ninth-layer blood-refining realm sea turtle was heavily injured by the remaining force of the winged female sword. It was on the verge of death, but it wasn't dead yet. When the sea turtle saw Lu Ping approaching, it made a kneeling posture. This was a demonic beast's gesture of begging for mercy and acknowledging its master. Lu Ping was surprised. It seemed like this sea turtle's intelligence was not low. Normally, demonic beasts would only gain intelligence after reaching the blood condensation realm. This sea turtle was obviously the same as Debeo, having gained intelligence in advance. Lu Ping fed the sea turtle one of the blood-refining healing pills he concocted for the sea turtle before putting it back into the spirit beast pouch to recuperate. The few mid-grade magic tools were randomly placed into one of the interspatial pouches. Out of the 4 interspatial pouches, Lu Ping found 180 stalks of 500-year-old spiritual herbs. Among them, the Ocean Flame Sect's leader had 120 stalks. It seemed like he had reaped a huge harvest in the 3rd spiritual herb garden in Song Mountain. There were a total of 10,000 spirit stones. This made Lu Ping a little excited. Finally, he had another batch of spirit stones to spend. He found 5 bottles of blood condensation realm medicinal pills. He wouldn't have to worry about cultivation pills for the time being. However, the quality of the pills was only average. If he could find some high-grade blood condensation realm medicinal pills, he might be able to break through to the peak of the 2nd-layer blood condensation realm. On the other hand, other than a talisman treasure, he also found a blood condensation pill. Ever since Lu Ping broke through to the blood condensation realm, he hadn't seen this pill again. It was a pleasant surprise. The talisman treasure was made by a golden core 2nd-layer cultivator and could only be used once. However, the brand new talisman told Lu Ping that the Ocean Flame Sect's leader might not be a simple person. That was strange. Those he had killed and those who were against him, why were they all people with extraordinary identities? Lu Ping smiled bitterly and threw the matter to the back of his mind. There was a jade slip about array formations in Wang Huiman's interspatial pouch. Since Lu Ping wasn't interested in array formations, he could give it to Hu Lily so she could study it. From the jade slip, he found the contents of the illusory mist array. Following the jade slip's introduction, Lu Ping found the array plate in front of him. The array was intact, but the spirit stones and spiritual materials inlaid on it had been smashed by Lu Ping's landslide. Lu Ping didn't know where to place the spirit stones and spirit materials on the board, so he didn't have any use for it. Chapter 95. First, Lu Ping fought with 4 third-layer blood condensation cultivators. During the fight, he continuously used high-grade magic tools. This caused Lu Ping's arcane energy to be almost depleted. Even with the help of high-quality spiritual recovery pills, it still took Lu Ping half a day to replenish his arcane energy. Fei Ling Island was only open for 18 days. On Song Mountain alone, Lu Ping had spent nearly 3 days. Lu Ping didn't linger any longer. He hurried towards Jianghu Mountain. A day later, Lu Ping carefully avoided all the dangers along the way. Finally, he saw Jianghu Mountain in front of him. Before he reached halfway up the mountain, he could hear the rumbling of arcane energy and the collision of mystic instruments. Lu Ping was a little anxious. It seemed like the battle had already begun, and there was no shortage of lucky people everywhere. Lu Ping looked over from afar and saw 6 cultivators from Xianling sect, Songlang sect, Feiyu sect and Linggu sect. They were the 4 cultivators who were besieging an array formation. Lu Ping was startled. He quickly took a few steps forward and saw that among the 4 besieged cultivators, 2 were from Zhenling sect, while the other 2 were from Songhai sect and Chongming sect. The 4 of them worked together and cooperated well with each other. Although they were at a disadvantage against the 6 Xianling sect disciples, they weren't in too much danger for the time being. At this time, both sides of the battle noticed Lu Ping's arrival. Zhenling's group of 4 was overjoyed. The leader, whom Lu Ping recognized as Wei Ziheng, suddenly said to one of the 6 Xianling disciples, "Zhang Weiqing, the 6 of you have been attacking us for a long time, but you can't do anything to us. Now that we have reinforcements, aren't you afraid that the newly discovered Xianglu Mountain Alchemy Room will be taken by someone else?" Zhang Weiqing, the leader of the 6 Xianling disciples, was obviously tempted by Wei Ziheng's words. He turned to look at Lu Ping and saw Lu Ping wielding a pair of goose feather swords. He pondered for a moment, then snorted angrily, "Wei, I'll let you have the advantage this time." Then he turned to his 5 disciples and said, "Retreat." The 5 disciples originally wanted to argue, but Zhang Weiqing shouted, "The alchemy room is more important." So the 5 of them stopped arguing and quickly rushed to the top of Xianglu Mountain. Wei Ziheng and the other 3 Xianling disciples breathed a sigh of relief when they saw the 6 of them leaving. Wei Ziheng said, "Junior brother Lu, you came at the right time. Let me introduce you to 2 fellow Taoists from Songhai sect and Chongming sect." The cultivator from Songhai sect was called Qian Xueqing, the cultivator from Chongming sect was called Tianzong Liang, and the remaining disciple from Jinling was He Zifeng, whom Lu Ping already knew on the way to Feiling Island. Every cultivator who entered Feiling Island had a sensing talisman that was distributed by their sects, allowing them to quickly gather cultivators from the same sects or sects that were close to each other. This way it would be easier to move around Feiling Island, especially when exploring the 3 final peaks of Lingyao Mountain, Xianglu Peak and Feiling Peak. Battles were almost unavoidable. Therefore, cultivators from the same sects or sects that were familiar with each other would be able to obtain the greatest harvest while ensuring their safety. Lu Ping also had a sensor talisman, but he was unlucky enough to be teleported to the foot of Tsang Mountain. There were no fellow disciples around, so he was almost killed by the cultivators from Hai Yen sect and Shui Yen Pavilion who had gathered together to explore the artifact refining hall. The reason Lu Ping was able to rush in the direction of Wei Ziheng and the others as soon as he entered Xianglu Mountain was also because of the sensor talisman. Through Wei Ziheng, Lu Ping learned that the situation in Lingyao Mountain was now at daggers drawn. About half of the 200 cultivators who entered Feiling Island were now gathered at Lingyao Mountain, and there were still more cultivators rushing over. If it weren't for everyone being busy collecting spiritual herbs, perhaps a large-scale conflict would have already broken out. Even so, there were still many disputes over high-grade spiritual herbs. By the time Wei Ziheng and the others left, 7 or 8 people had already died and more than a dozen were injured. Xianglu Mountain normally wouldn't attract so many people. There were only a few spiritual herb gardens on it, but this time there was an accident. A cultivator found an alchemy room in the back mountain of Xianglu Mountain. There was a complete protective array outside the alchemy room, indicating that no one had entered it before. Naturally, several people were overjoyed and hoped to break through the array to obtain the benefits inside. Unexpectedly, the protective array was unusually tough. It didn't show any signs of collapsing after being attacked for a long time. Instead, it attracted even more cultivators' attention. Moreover, everyone deduced that this should be a core forging enlightened master's cave abode for alchemy, so the news spread. After cultivators from various sects on Lingyao Mountain heard about it, they all sent reinforcements to Xianglu Mountain. Wei Ziheng and the others had just arrived from Lingyao Mountain. Wei Ziheng and the others were lucky. When they arrived at the mountainside of Xianglu Mountain, they actually found a hidden spiritual herb garden. However, they didn't expect their whereabouts to be noticed by the 6 cultivators sent by Xianling sect to Xianglu Mountain. Therefore, Xianling sect attacked them by force. Fortunately, Wei Ziheng discovered it early and commanded them well. With the 4 of them cooperating with each other, they managed to resist the onslaught of the 6 cultivators until Lu Ping appeared. Every time Feiling Island opened, some hidden places would often be discovered. It was mostly because the arrays in these places hadn't been maintained by cultivators for thousands of years, so they lost their ability to conceal themselves. This spiritual herb garden was surprisingly small, but the array that enveloped it was very powerful. This was the reason why Wei Ziheng and the others didn't retreat. How could the spiritual herbs protected by such a powerful array be weak? Among the 5 of them, none of them had any knowledge of arrays. In fact, arrays were the most difficult to learn among the 100 arts, so there weren't many people who studied them. Helpless, the 5 of them could only use the most primitive method, breaking the array with force. The 5 of them each took out their own magic tools and attacked the array. For a moment there was a loud bang again. Lu Ping was still using the goose feather dual blades to perform the raging waves crashing shore sword art. Wave after wave of blades kept attacking the array. Among the 5 of them, only the 2 from Jinling knew a little about Lu Ping. The 2 from Songhai sect and Chongming sect initially had doubts about the strength of a second-layer blood condensation cultivator like Jinling. However, when they saw that Lu Ping's attacks on the array were no weaker than their own, their doubts were dispelled. Lu Ping was also observing the 4 of them. He discovered that they all had a strong foundation and had reached the technique realm. In fact, everyone who entered Feiling Island this time was quite strong. If not, Lu Ping wouldn't have spent so much effort to kill the 4 from Hai Yen sect and Shui Yen Pavilion. Under the joint attack of the 5, the array might be tenacious, but it still broke in the end. The fragrance of mature spiritual herbs filled the air, causing the 5 of them to exclaim in surprise. Lu Ping recognized that these spirit herbs were used to concoct late blood condensation realm medicinal pellets. They were far more valuable than ordinary 500-year spirit herbs. Lu Ping knew that these spirit herbs were used to concoct late blood condensation realm medicinal pellets. But that wasn't the most important thing. In the center of the garden, there were 14 stalks of 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs that had matured. These were used to concoct core forging pills. The value of one stalk was equivalent to 10 stalks of 500-year-old spiritual herbs. Wei Ziheng looked at Lu Ping awkwardly. Lu Ping smiled faintly and said, "I was the last to arrive, so I didn't participate in the battle with Xianling's sect. I only need 2 stalks of these 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs." The 2 people from Songhai sect and Chongming sect relaxed when they heard this. Wei Ziheng smiled gratefully at Lu Ping and said, "In that case, junior brother can pick first. We will split the remaining 500-year-old spiritual herbs equally." The 14 stalks of spiritual herbs were divided into 2 types. Lu Ping took 1 stalk each, and the remaining stalks were divided among the other 3. Lu Ping also got 8 stalks of 500-year-old spiritual herbs. The 5 of them quickly rushed to the back mountain. By now they were already 4 hours behind Xianling sect's Zhang Weiqing and the rest. At this time the back mountain of Xianglu Peak was in a mess. All kinds of magic spells and magic items were thrown at the protective formation outside the alchemy room. However, the light blue formation was still glowing, firmly protecting the alchemy room in front of everyone. Among the group of people standing in front of the formation were Zhang Weiqing and the other 5 who had left earlier. This group of people belonged to the Mysterious Spirit sect, the Vast Wave sect, the Flying Feather sect, and the Soaring Ancient sect. There were 16 people in total, and they occupied the best position to attack the alchemy room. There were 3 people in one group and 2 groups in the other. Altogether there were 50 to 60 people. One group consisted of 10 people from Hai Yen sect and Shui Yen Pavilion. The other group consisted of 10 people from Zhenling sect, Songhai sect, Jade Sword sect, and Chongming sect. At this moment, these 10 people were anxiously looking at the top of the mountain. The Zhenling sect disciple who was leading the group murmured, "Why isn't Senior Marshal Brother Wei here yet?" When Lu Ping and the others arrived, the protective formation had dimmed by more than half. The leader of the Zhenling sect's group was called Su Ziping. When he saw Wei Ziheng and the others, his spirits rose and he hurriedly came to greet them. Wei Ziheng asked Su Ziping about the situation at the back mountain, and Su Ziping said, "The situation is not good. Xianling sect has the advantage in numbers, and they have occupied the best position. Hai Yen sect and Shui Yen Pavilion's attitude is unclear, and the cultivators from the other sects and families also have their own plans. The protective formation will break in at most 2 hours, and we are already 1 step behind." Wei Ziheng pondered for a moment, then said, "Junior brother Su has studied formations, so pay close attention to the weakening of the protective formation. Once the formation is broken, there might be a chaotic battle. When that time comes, we must not rush in recklessly, and don't be blinded by the treasures inside. Only by rushing in together will we obtain the greatest benefits." Everyone nodded, took out their mystic instruments and attacked the protective formation. At the same time, they conserved their strength and paid attention to the situation of the cultivators at the back mountain. Lu Ping looked at the cave abode where the alchemy lab was located. This cave abode was built on a low cliff on a large platform in the back mountain. The entire cave abode was firmly protected by a formation, and only the 4 words Zhangping Alchemy Lab were written on the stone wall at the entrance of the cave abode, arousing the greed of many cultivators. Lu Ping thought for a moment, then walked to an inconspicuous place and secretly waved his sleeve. He stood on the spot for a while, then returned to the group of Zhenling sect disciples and attacked the protective formation. Chapter 96. As the power of the array weakened, the atmosphere became more and more tense. Under Zhang Weiqing's command, the 16 Xianling sect disciples split into 2 groups and guarded the 2 sides, buying time for Zhang Weiqing's group to enter the cave first. Zhenling's group, Hai Yan's group and Shui Yen Pavilion's cultivators slowly approached the Xianling sect group from 2 sides, alerting Zhang Weiqing. He turned to the cultivators on both sides and gave them an order. Pop! The protective array formation outside the cave abode burst like a giant bubble on the surface of water. Before anyone could retract their artifacts, the Xianling sect disciples rushed towards the cave abode. On both sides, Zhenling's group, Hai Yan's group, and Shui Yan's group cut in from the sides at the same time, trying to split the Xianling sect group into 2 sides and follow Zhang Weiqing's group into the cave. Unexpectedly, the 8 people from Xianling sect suddenly dodged to the side, revealing the originally sealed cave entrance. At the same time, they attacked the surrounding area with their mystic artifacts. This time, the cultivators who were following closely behind the three major groups also became the target of their attacks. The situation outside the cave was instantly thrown into chaos. Everyone's attacks suddenly became blind, squeezing together at the cave entrance and attacking each other randomly. Wei Ziheng, Su Ziping, and Lu Ping reacted quickly and dashed into the cave before the Xianling sect cultivators could interrupt them. Following them were a few cultivators from Hai Yan's and Shui Yan's group. The two groups, together with the 8 Xianling sect cultivators who barged in earlier, looted everything in the cave. They didn't even have time to look at anything they found useful and just threw it into their storage bags. Those that were really useless were thrown to the ground and smashed to pieces. The cave was very large. Apart from the largest cave, there were many small caves around it. The caves were connected to each other just like a small maze. Lu Ping walked around the caves, quickly putting away anything that looked useful. However, Lu Ping could tell that there weren't many valuable things in the cave, or perhaps he hadn't found anything yet. The items in the cave residence were very messy, but it didn't look like it had been looted. It seemed that the owner of the cave residence had hurriedly taken away the useful things in the cave residence after Fei Ling's sect was attacked, and then closed the cave residence. Turning into a cave, Lu Ping saw a dozen jade boxes with spirit sealing charms placed on top of a rotten wooden shelf. They were probably used to store spirit herbs. At the same time, there were also 2 jade bottles with medicinal pellets inside. Lu Ping's face lit up with joy. Just as he swept the items into his interspatial pouch, he heard a burst of arcane energy. A cultivator was fighting in the cave dwelling. Just as Lu Ping was about to leave his cave, the rumbling sounds outside suddenly grew louder. It seemed like the loot in the cave dwelling was almost finished. Everyone's attention was now on the cultivators who had obtained something. Lu Ping shook his head and prepared to meet up with Wei Ziheng and the others. He didn't want to become the target of everyone's attacks and die a wrongful death. At this moment, a strong wind blew. At the entrance of the cave, 2 cultivators, one in front and one behind, rushed in. Lu Ping was surprised to see a Xianling sect cultivator in front of him. When this cultivator saw that there was already someone in the cave, and it was a disciple of his archenemy, Zhenling, he naturally knew that this person was blocking his way. Without saying a word, the Xianling sect cultivator threw a short sword towards Lu Ping's face. Lu Ping was annoyed. At this moment, he clearly saw that the cultivator chasing him was from Hai Yan's sect. Remembering that the 4 people who attacked him at the foot of Tsang Mountain were instigated by Hai Yan sect cultivators, Lu Ping didn't have a good impression of them. Disregarding everything else, he took out a pair of high-grade magic tools, soaring swords. The 2 magic tools separated and attacked the 2 at the same time. Arrogant. The Xianling sect and Hai Yan sect cultivators were enraged. Since when did a second-layer blood condensation realm disciple of Zhenling become so arrogant? The sound of 2 magic tools colliding could be heard. High-grade magic tools? It's actually force. 2 exclamations sounded one after the other. This time, the 2 cultivators put away the disdain on their faces and focused on their enemies. Lu Ping spread out his divine sense, which was equivalent to a 4th-layer blood condensation realm cultivator. He understood the situation inside and outside the cave and knew that everyone was heading towards the cave where the battle first erupted. Without any hesitation, he used landslide again. This time, due to the height of the cave, he couldn't smash it from the air. Amidst the Xianling sect disciples' screams of shock, landslide smashed him into the cave wall with unstoppable force. His ribs were severely deformed, and blood spurted out of his mouth like it was free of charge. The Hai Yan sect disciple behind him screamed in fear. 2 high-grade magic tools? How is that possible? Lu Ping couldn't be bothered to answer him. He used the soaring wing sword and used twin swords harmony. Sword waves whistled through the air, and the place where the Hai Yan sect disciple was standing was now littered with 7 or 8 pieces of corpses. Lu Ping took the 2's interspatial pouches and looked at the item in the Xianling sect disciple's hand. The 2 of them must have come here for this item. Lu Ping picked it up and saw that it was 2 pill recipes. He didn't have the time to look at them in detail. The sounds of explosions outside were getting louder and louder. It seemed like the cultivators outside the cave were also attacking. With a wave of his hand, Lu Ping burned the 2 corpses on the ground to ashes. If there were 2 Xianling sect and Hai Yan sect cultivators' corpses, the first people to enter the cave would be Xianling sect, Zhenling sect, Hai Yan sect, and Shui Yan pavilion. Who would know who did it? When Lu Ping came out of the cave, he saw Wei Ziheng, Su Ziping, and the others rushing over. Lu Ping looked behind him and asked, "Where are senior martial brothers He Zifeng and Tian Zongliang?" Wei Ziheng's expression darkened as he said, "Two of our junior brothers have fallen. In the chaotic battle, Xianling sect and Water Cloud Pavilion cultivators killed them. However, they didn't gain any advantage either. Xianling sect lost 2, Haiyan sect lost 1, and Shuiyan Pavilion lost 2. We didn't lose anything." Lu Ping wanted to say that he killed 2 of them, but on second thought he decided against it. Everyone rushed out of the cave, wondering what happened to the few people who were guarding the rear. Along the way, Lu Ping learned that the 3 groups that rushed into the cave finally met in the real pill chamber. There were 2 pill cauldrons in the pill chamber, but one of them was empty, leaving only a high-grade pill cauldron beside it. The wooden shelves around the pill cauldron were filled with a large number of jade boxes filled with spirit herbs, dozens of jade bottles filled with medicinal pills, and jade slips and pill recipes. Due to the disorderly arrangement of the items, the first group of Xianling sect cultivators took half of the jade slips, jade bottles, jade boxes and pill recipes. Junling Haiyan and Shuiyan cultivators followed closely behind. When Wei Ziheng saw that Xianling sect had the upper hand, he didn't fight with Xianling sect cultivators like Haiyan and Shuiyan cultivators. Instead, he and the others fought for the pill cauldron. Although the other 2 groups also had their eyes on the pill cauldron, they weren't as united as Xianling sect. By the time the other 2 groups reacted from the jade bottles and jade boxes, Wei Ziheng had already taken the pill cauldron. Hearing Wei Ziheng's story, Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. He probed his storage bag with his divine sense and found a total of 30 jade boxes and 13 jade bottles. Among them, the Xianling sect cultivator had more items. The pill recipes and jade slips probably couldn't compare to the 2 that the Xianling sect cultivator had. Other than that, there were nearly 6,000 spirit stones, more than 100 stalks of 500-year-old spirit herbs, a few Dharma artifacts and other miscellaneous items. Lu Ping did a rough calculation. He already had nearly 500 stalks of 500-year-old spirit herbs. Adding the 2,000-year-old spirit herbs, he had 600 stalks in total. On top of that, he also found nearly 50 jade boxes in the cave. He didn't know how many 500-year-old spirit herbs were inside. More and more cultivators rushed into the cave, and the cave was ransacked again. When Lu Ping's group of 5 came out of the cave and met up with the cultivators at the back, they realized that only 5 of the 8 cultivators at the back were left. 3 of them had died in the battle. The Zhenling sect initially had 15 people, but now there were only 10 left. 2 of them were from Zhenling, and 1 each from the other 3 sections. In less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the cultivators in the cave came out one after another. Clearly, the 3 groups that entered first had gotten the most benefits, while the rest of the cultivators only got leftovers. There were still a few cultivators who didn't want to give up and were still searching the cave, hoping to get some unexpected benefits. Lu Ping looked around. Initially there were more than 60 people outside the cave, but now there were only about 40 left. Other than the 15 from the Zhenling sect, there were only 10 left. The Xianling sect won the first place, but they paid the price of 7 people. Only Zhang Weiqing and 8 people were left hurriedly. Haiyan and Shuiyan sects 10 people also left in a hurry. Wei Ziheng looked at everyone and said, "The matter at Censer Peak is over. Everyone hurry to Lingyao Mountain as soon as possible. I'm afraid a battle is about to break out there. We have to go back and help." Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Senior Marshal Brother Wei, I still have some things to take care of. I'm afraid I'll have to go back later." Wei Ziheng frowned and said unhappily, "Junior Marshal Brother Lu, the situation is urgent. One more person means one more chance of winning. Besides, where can the harvest be better than Lingyao Mountain?" Lu Ping smiled embarrassedly and said, "I received some pointers from enlightened Master Jiang on my way here. I want to go to a few places to have a look." When Wei Ziheng and the others heard that it was Jiang Xuanlin's instructions, their expressions immediately relaxed. Even the disciples of Canghai and Jade Sword sects were envious when they heard Lu Ping's words. It was clear how famous Jiang Xianlin was. Wei Ziheng smiled and said, "Since it was enlightened Master Jiang's instructions, then Junior Marshal Brother should hurry. Just be careful. On Feiling Island, you can't trust anyone except your own people." Lu Ping knew this very well, so he quickly thanked Wei Ziheng. Su Ziping reminded him, "Just remember to meet up with us in the last 3 days. In the end, all the cultivators on Feiling Island will gather at Feiling Peak. That is the real moment of the final battle." Lu Ping said goodbye to everyone. Although enlightened Master Jiang did point out a few places for Lu Ping to go alone, the harvest might not be that great. The key was that the upcoming conflict on Lingyao Mountain was just the first reshuffle of the cultivators on Feiling Island. The final result would still depend on the trip to Feiling Peak. At that time, not only would they see the harvest on Feiling Peak, but they would also see the harvest from hunting on Feiling Peak. Of course, before that, Lu Ping had another secret. De Bao was already waiting for him in front. Chapter 97. After everyone outside the cave mansion left, Lu Ping walked towards the forest behind the mountain. He spread out his divine sense and scanned his surroundings vigilantly. Suddenly, Lu Ping clapped his hands and the ground that was covered with rotten leaves suddenly rolled up. A big fat mouse with a pile of rotten leaves on its head looked around. When it saw Lu Ping, it jumped up and shook off the dirt on its body before climbing onto Lu Ping's shoulder. When Lu Ping saw everyone attacking the cave mansion's protective array, he suddenly had an idea. He wanted to let De Bao try to enter the cave mansion from underground. So, when everyone was attacking the protective array, he placed De Bao on the ground while no one was paying attention. De Bao's cultivation had improved, and his ability to dig holes had also improved. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the ground. Initially, Lu Ping only had a slim chance, but he didn't expect De Bao to find a flaw in the cave dwelling's protective array formation. Perhaps this was the reason why the cave dwelling was unearthed this time. In short, De Bao entered the cave dwelling before the protective array formation was broken. Lu Ping followed De Bao to the place where he hid his treasures. De Bao first dug out 3 bottles of medicinal pills from the ground. Lu Ping picked them up and saw that they were the 100 spirit pills used by late blood condensation cultivators. This kind of medicinal pill was one of the best medicinal pills for the blood condensation realm. It was similar to the blood vigor pill for the blood refining realm. When De Bao saw that Lu Ping was happy, he also became excited. He dug out 2 more jade bottles from the ground. Lu Ping's eyes lit up. These medicinal bottles were actually made from jade crystals. One should know that jade crystals were a mid-grade spiritual material. Could it be? Lu Ping opened the jade bottle and saw 10 golden medicinal pellets inside. However, there was no medicinal smell coming from the jade bottle. These were the only core forging realm medicinal pellets recorded in the Xing Tao alchemy scripture. The golden marrow pellets. Lu Ping opened the second bottle. There were 10 gray medicinal pills inside. There was no luster on the surface. They didn't look like core forging realm medicinal pills at all. However, Lu Ping knew that these medicinal pills were better than the golden marrow pills. It was just that Lu Ping's knowledge was shallow and he didn't know the name of this pill. De Bao must have taken out the most important thing in the cave mansion other than the furnace. Lu Ping was about to praise De Bao when he saw De Bao burrowing into the ground again. Lu Ping's face lit up. Could there be more treasures? As the ground shook, De Bao used its sharp nose to roll a round bead out of the ground. Lu Ping played with the bead in his hand. There seemed to be a warm cloud in the middle of the bead. Lu Ping carefully tried to recall where he had heard about this bead. Suddenly his face stiffened. Is this a spirit-gathering bead? According to the legend, spirit-gathering bead was a strange object that was condensed in a spirit vein. It was a kind of spiritual source that was nurtured by a spirit vein for a long time. It was a way for a spirit vein to strengthen itself. Normally, this kind of spirit-gathering bead could only be condensed in a small spirit vein. Moreover, it would take at least 1,000 years for it to condense. Lu Ping looked at the cloud and the spirit-gathering bead in his hand. This should be a kind of spirit-gathering bead produced by a small spirit vein. It seemed that there used to be a branch of a small spirit vein in the cave mansion. Usually, when there were 10 kinds of spirit veins, the spirit vein could be upgraded by 1 level. In other words, 10 small spirit veins could form a small spirit vein. Similarly, 10 small spirit veins could form a medium spirit vein. If he placed this spirit-gathering pearl in his cave abode, he would be able to add another miniature spirit vein to his cave abode in a few years. Seeing De Bao jumping up and down, Lu Ping knew that it was showing off. So, he patted its head and took out a blood purification pill from his storage bag and threw it to it. Then De Bao happily explored the way for Lu Ping. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days had passed. Lu Ping had explored most of the places enlightened Master Jiang Shenlin pointed out and gained a lot of information. However, there were a few places that had already been explored, so Lu Ping didn't find anything useful. Obviously, there were many cultivators who had received guidance from the sect's seniors and were familiar with Fei Ling Mountain's many hidden places. In the past 3 days, Lu Ping had collected a total of 150 500-year-old spirit herbs and 4 1,000-year-old spirit herbs, which made Lu Ping very satisfied. At the same time, Lu Ping also collected 6 1,000-year-old spirit herbs that were far from mature and planned to transplant them into the spirit herb garden in his cave mansion. In Lu Ping's own spirit herb garden, there were only 3 1,000-year-old spirit herbs that were not mature and golden marrow grass that had not matured yet. He needed to prepare for his future. Along the way, Lu Ping also found traces of other cultivators. Obviously, not all cultivators had gone to Spiritual Medicine Mountain. However, the cultivators were very restrained. Unless there was a direct conflict of interest, they would often avoid each other in advance. No one was affected by each other. Lu Ping had just come down from Flying Cloud Mountain where the Talisman Crafting Pavilion was located. He had made some gains in a secret place. Now he wanted to go to a mine on Failing Island to take a look. This mine produced a spiritual material called Heavenly Gold Sand, which was an important mineral for forging metal attribute high-grade magic tools. From his conversation with Chen Lian, Lu Ping learned that Heavenly Gold Sand could even be used to forge top-grade magic tools. Lu Ping was going to dig some and bring it back for Chen Lian to see as a gift for him. Lu Ping knew that a refiner's hobby of collecting minerals was similar to a pill refiner's fondness for spirit herbs. The more the better. The Heavenly Gold Sand mine was not on the 5 peaks of Failing Island. Instead, it was in a rocky hill on the west side of Failing Island. After cultivators entered Failing Island, they all set their sights on the 5 peaks of Failing Island, where spirit veins converged. They did not pay attention to the other places on the island, except for people like Lu Ping who had some understanding of the secret places of Failing Island. Along the way, Lu Ping saw many places where spirit energy gathered and spirit grains grew. However, spirit grains were clearly not of interest to Lu Ping. Naturally, Lu Ping would not spend a large amount of time collecting spirit grains. Someone had already arrived at the Heavenly Gold Sand mine. Lu Ping found a warning restriction left by a cultivator at the entrance of the mine. If it wasn't for Lu Ping's powerful spiritual sense, he might not have discovered it immediately. Lu Ping originally wanted to leave, but he thought about how difficult it was to come here. It had been 7 days since he entered Failing Island, and he did not know if he would have the opportunity to return. Thus he raised his voice and said, "Which sect is this fellow Taoist from? Junling Lu Zipping has come to visit. I want to dig some heavenly gold sand ores. To avoid any misunderstandings, I specially came to inform you." After Lu Ping finished speaking, a cultivator who was about the same age as Lu Ping walked out. When he saw that it was only Lu Ping, he thought for a moment and said, "I am AI Shu Tao from the AI clan of West Hill Island. This mine is very big and I can't occupy it all by myself. Fellow Taoists can find a place to dig for the ores." Lu Ping entered the mine. As AI Shu Tao had said, there were many mining veins. This was a medium-sized heavenly gold sand mine. Lu Ping chose a mine that had been excavated from a branch vein and let De Bao out. Unfortunately, De Bao was only sensitive to spiritual chi fluctuations. It was difficult for him to distinguish between rich and poor veins in the mine. Without any other choice, Lu Ping could only personally go into the mine. He used an illumination technique in the dark mine and chose a direction. He used a giant axe magic artifact that he had obtained from an unknown cultivator and randomly smashed the mine. Then he picked out the ores that contained golden ores. After an entire day he had only picked over 1,000 ores. He didn't know how much heavenly gold sand he had obtained. Fortunately, Lu Ping didn't plan on digging too much. Just as Lu Ping was about to leave, an arrogant laugh came from the entrance of the mine. "Brat, you dare to dig here alone? It's fortunate that you were able to find this place. If you know what's good for you, hand over all the heavenly gold sand ores and we might let you live." Lu Ping's footsteps paused. He heard AI Shu Tao's voice coming from the entrance of the mine. "If you too want the heavenly gold sand ores, there are many in the mine. If you want what I have, then we can only fight to the death." Another voice rang out. "Hee hee, what a big tone. Us two brothers want to see if your net will break after the fish dies. You are the only one from the AI clan to enter Failing Island this time, right? I heard that you are the most outstanding among the younger generation of the AI clan. I wonder if the AI clan will go for wool and come home shorn if you die here today." AI Shu Tao snorted angrily and said, "This time the opening of Failing Island will open. Out of the 30 sects and clans in the North Sea, only the top 10 sects and clans have occupied 75% of the quota. Your Gilded Sword sect only sent 2 people to enter Failing Island this time. Are you sure that you two can defeat me? If I leave Failing Island, it's hard to say who will die." The arrogant voice shouted, "Your AI clan only has 1 Fa Xiang Laozu? My Gilded Sword sect has 2 Laozu. Why would we be afraid of your AI clan? Cut the crap. Give me your life. When Lu Ping came out of the mine, the battle between the two sides had become white-hot. AI Shu Tao was fighting 1 against 2. Although he was at a disadvantage, he was not afraid at all. A set of mother-child daggers was flying in the sky, blocking the attacks of the 2 flying swords of the Gilded Sword sect and protecting himself. The sudden appearance of Lu Ping surprised the 2 people of the Gilded Sword sect. They didn't expect that there would be another person in the mine and that he was a disciple of Jinling, a tycoon of the North Sea. The arrogant cultivator wanted to say something, but Lu Ping didn't give him a chance. The 2 goose-feather daggers danced in the air and slashed at the cultivator. When AI Shu Tao saw that Lu Ping was helping him, he became spirited. The 9 flying daggers shuttled back and forth in the air and attacked the other cultivator. Instantly he gained the upper hand. The 2 people of the Gilded Sword sect didn't expect that the situation would be reversed. Under Lu Ping's continuous attacks, the arrogant cultivator exerted all his strength, but his defense was still broken by Lu Ping. He felt a numbness in his chest because a 3-inch flying needle had pierced the space of his heart core. After succeeding, Lu Ping took the storage bag of the arrogant cultivator and checked it. There were 100 500-year-old spiritual herbs and 2,000 spirit stones in it. Obviously, the wealth of the arrogant cultivator was much lower than that of the disciples of the big sections. When the other cultivator in the air saw that Lu Ping killed his senior fellow apprentice easily, he panicked and messed up his moves. AI Shu Tao was not weak. He seized the opportunity and stabbed 3 flying daggers into the body of the cultivator of the Gilded Sword sect. Chapter 98. AI Shu Tao flew down and thanked Lu Ping for his help. Lu Ping didn't seem to mind and said that it was nothing. At the same time he bid farewell to AI Shu Tao. AI Shu Tao said with some regret, "Lu Daoyu, why don't you just stay here and mine for the heavenly gold sand? This island is in chaos and your life is in danger at any time." Lu Ping smiled and said, "In another 6 or 7 days the people on the island will attack Fei Ling Mountain. I need to go and meet up with my fellow brothers and sisters." AI Shu Tao suddenly understood and said, "Right, you are Jinling's disciple, so naturally, you will have to participate in the battle of Fei Ling Mountain. I am alone, so I will hide here in mine. Hopefully I will have a stable harvest." Lu Ping bid farewell to AI Shu Tao and headed towards Mount Guanyun, where the scripture pavilion was located. Out of the 5 peaks of Fei Ling Mountain, Lu Ping had already seen 3 of them. In the past few days he had also seen the scenery outside the peaks. The only places he hadn't been to were Mount Guanyun, where the scripture pavilion was located, and Mount Lingyao, where the battle was currently going on. However, there was something more important at the moment. Lu Ping's cultivation had reached the peak of the 2nd layer of the blood condensation realm, and he was on the verge of breaking through in the past 2 days. This was also the reason why Lu Ping didn't follow Wei Ziheng and the others back to Mount Lingyao. Originally, Lu Ping planned to break through in the heavenly gold sand mine, but he didn't expect that AI Shu Tao had already arrived there and planned to stay until Fei Ling Island closed. Lu Ping had no choice but to look for another place to break through. After searching the vicinity of Mount Guanyun, Lu Ping didn't find much. However, Lu Ping found some mid-grade spiritual materials. In the end, Lu Ping found a mine about 30 li away from Mount Guanyun. This was a small spirit mine that produced red granite, which was used to craft mid-grade fire attribute magic tools. Lu Ping sent De Bao out to guard the entrance of the mine and had the sea turtle, which had mostly recovered from its injuries, block the entrance of the mine. Then he took out the spirit gathering praying mat from his storage bag and found a place where spiritual energy gathered. He used the sacrificial soul technique to detonate it. Although this could increase the concentration of spiritual energy for a short period of time, the place would dissipate after it was used. Lu Ping sat on the spirit gathering mat and swallowed one of the best blood condensation realm pills he had so far. He held a mid-grade spirit stone in each hand and placed the spirit gathering pearl on his chest. Then he began to circulate the Linhai wave listening technique, and began his breakthrough. The Linhai wave listening technique was a pure water attribute cultivation technique. It was a slow and steady cultivation technique. Lu Ping was actually quite concerned about the stability of his foundation and the accumulation of spiritual energy. He didn't expect that he would break through to the 3rd level in less than a year after breaking through to the 2nd level of the blood condensation realm. However, after the incident on Shenqi Island, Lu Ping experienced the demon race's invasion and the series of battles on Fei Ling Island. Coupled with the continuous supply of medicinal pills, Lu Ping's cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. In fact, Lu Ping was still worried about his bloodline. He was lucky to awaken his bloodline at the age of 6 with an ordinary aptitude. But when he broke through to the blood condensation realm, his foundation bloodline, the flood dragon bloodline, swallowed the tortoise bloodline. That really gave Lu Ping a fright. Fortunately, he didn't encounter any problems when he broke through to the second level of the blood condensation realm. However, Lu Ping was still worried that his foundation bloodline would cause trouble again. His spiritual energy flowed along with his blood. At this moment, his foundation bloodline also became restless. This time, it fused with the ice attribute tiger bloodline. Like before, it swallowed the spiritual energy from the tiger bloodline. The flood dragon bloodline absorbed the spiritual energy from the tiger bloodline and absorbed it into its own spiritual energy. It didn't fuse with the tiger bloodline. There was no trace of the tiger bloodline in the flood dragon bloodline. His foundation bloodline was still as tyrannical as ever. The only difference this time was that the tiger bloodline that had lost its spiritual energy still existed. It wasn't like the tortoise bloodline, which was completely swallowed by the foundation bloodline. Lu Ping opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of dark red viscous blood. He collected it in a jade bottle he had prepared beforehand. This was the wasted bloodline. But after the foundation bloodline devoured the arcane energy in the bloodline, there was no longer any vitality left in the bloodline. Lu Ping heard that after other cultivators advanced to the blood condensation realm, the wasted bloodline would lose its spiritual energy, but its vitality would remain. This was also an important method that alchemists could use to refine blood replenishing pills, meridian stabilizing pills, and other pills to replenish the bloodline when breaking through to the mid-blood condensation realm, late blood condensation realm and golden core realm. Obviously, Lu Ping's wasted bloodline didn't have this function. Fortunately, on the whole, Lu Ping didn't make any mistakes in his cultivation. He still followed the laws of the cultivation world. It was just that the foundation bloodline was a bit too overbearing. After receiving a large amount of spiritual energy, the foundation bloodline gathered strands of spiritual energy into the space in his heart core. A small condensed blood bead started to form. However, compared to the 2 condensed blood beads that he already had, this condensed blood bead was still very weak. He needed to continue accumulating spiritual energy. Lu Ping took a day to break through to the blood condensation realm and another 3 days to consolidate his new cultivation. Only then did he come out of the mine. De Bao obviously understood that Lu Ping must have obtained some benefits from this closed-door cultivation, so it quickly came up to him to ask for credit. Lu Ping threw a blood purification pill to it. The giant sea turtle was very responsible and didn't move at the entrance of the mine for 4 days. Lu Ping still had a lot of blood vigor pills left over from when he was in the blood refining realm. He took one out and rewarded it to the giant sea turtle. The giant sea turtle obviously knew that this was a good thing and quickly swallowed it. There were only 3 or 4 days left before the opening of Fei Ling Mountain. The battle on Spiritual Medicine Mountain should be coming to an end. Lu Ping planned to go and take a look and meet up with Zhenling and the others. Before he left, Lu Ping dug out a bag of red granite from the mine. Although Lu Ping didn't care about mid-grade spirit ores, he didn't want them for free. Spiritual Medicine Mountain was the shortest among the 5 peaks of Fei Ling Mountain, but it occupied the largest area and had the richest spiritual energy. The largest branch of Fei Ling Mountain was on top of Spiritual Medicine Mountain. At this time, Spiritual Medicine Mountain was already barren. Along the way there were many traces of battle. Clearly the battle had ended. The cultivators had gathered according to their sects and were making their final preparations for the trip to Fei Ling Mountain. After another day, Lu Ping, who came alone, attracted the attention of the cultivators in Fei Ling Mountain. Lu Ping, who was treated as a fat sheep, was ambushed 3 times in a row. The first time, it was 2 disciples from an unknown sect. Lu Ping took care of them in a short while. When Lu Ping was in the second layer of the blood condensation realm, he could already kill 4 third-layer blood condensation realm disciples that surrounded him. Now that his cultivation had advanced, his strength was naturally much stronger. When he reached the waist of the mountain, cultivators from other sects who didn't know Lu Ping's background, surrounded Lu Ping again. This time there were 5 of them and one of them was a disciple from the Shuiyan Pavilion. Naturally, Lu Ping wouldn't hold back. With the soaring wing sword he killed 3 of them in the blink of an eye. As for the remaining 2, one used a secret technique to escape, while the other threw a storage bag to Lu Ping and ran away. The two battles on Spiritual Medicine Mountain that had already calmed down naturally appeared abrupt, arousing the curiosity of the cultivators on the mountain peak. When they found out that it was Lu Ping, Jinling's faction quickly sent people to support him. Only then did they manage to avoid a bigger conflict. Lu Ping obtained another 6 storage bags. Apart from the 6th bag which was left behind by an escaping cultivator to cover his escape, Lu Ping obtained a total of 1,000 stalks of 500-year-old spiritual herbs, 10 stalks of 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs, nearly 10,000 spirit stones, and 5 to 6 bottles of medicinal pills. This was Lu Ping's biggest harvest after entering Feiling Island. Lu Ping silently sorted out his harvest. It seemed that the cultivators on Spiritual Medicine Mountain had gained quite a lot. Fortunately, although his 2 battles had attracted the attention of the cultivators on the mountain peak, no one knew who won or lost the battles. Otherwise, they would eventually find out what kind of wealth Lu Ping was hiding. The mountain peak was very close to Feiling Mountain, so after the battle on Spiritual Medicine Mountain came to an end, no one left. Instead, they waited here for Feiling Mountain to open. Lu Ping listened to Wei Ziheng talk about what happened on Spiritual Medicine Mountain these few days. There were about 140 cultivators from various sects who participated in the battle on Spiritual Medicine Mountain, and in the end about 30 people died on Spiritual Medicine Mountain. The battle could be said to be tragic. During and after the battle, more cultivators arrived one after another. Now, the number of cultivators on Spiritual Medicine Mountain had recovered to 140 people. At this time, there were 44 cultivators left in Jinling's faction, and 42 cultivators in Xianling sect's faction. The difference between the two sides was not big. Hai Yin sect and Shui Yin Pavilion's faction originally had 30 people, but only 17 people were left. The other sect's disciples suffered the most losses. Now there were probably only about 30 people left. Nearly half of them had died. Feiling Mountain was the main peak of Feiling Island. It was the location of Feiling sect's giant spirit vein. Although it was now damaged and reduced to a large spirit vein, every 500 years, it was still the main target for cultivators who entered the island. Compared to the spirit herb garden on Feiling Mountain, Spiritual Medicine Mountain was just a bonus. More importantly, there were countless cave abodes on Feiling Mountain. Because of the weakening of the spiritual energy and the lack of someone to maintain the array formation for a long time, a different number of cave abodes would appear every time Feiling Mountain opened. Although the cave abodes of high-level cultivators had been swept clean by Fa Xiang Laozu, there were still a large number of cave abodes for other cultivators. Moreover, it was possible that there were no high-level cultivators' cave abodes that Laozu had missed. Once a core forging enlightened master's cave abode appeared, it would be a battle of life and death. There were still 2 days left. Lu Ping secretly put De Bao down and told him to go underground to find the spirit-gathering pearl formed by the source of the spiritual energy. Spiritual Medicine Mountain was formed by a branch of the spirit vein on Feiling Mountain. After thousands of years, there might be spirit-gathering pearls forming below it. Spiritual Medicine Mountain was huge, and the earth vein was also complicated. De Bao had only found the spirit vein of Spiritual Medicine Mountain in the belly of the mountain after a whole day of digging. Lu Ping was not in a hurry. The formation of this kind of thing was already a blessing, and he was already lucky enough to find it. Compared to other cultivators, Lu Ping was satisfied. On the last day, De Bao finally found a spirit-gathering pearl in the spirit vein. Although it was only a miniature spirit-gathering pearl, Lu Ping was still overjoyed and rewarded De Bao. Then he turned his attention to Feiling Mountain. However, De Bao had already exhausted his spiritual energy and did not have a trace of strength. He lay on the ground and refused to move no matter how many times Lu Ping called him. Chapter 99. When De Bao finally rested, Lu Ping realized that as the main peak of Feiling sect, Feiling Mountain was covered with layers of restrictions. De Bao couldn't get close to Feiling Mountain from underground, so Lu Ping had no choice but to put De Bao into the spirit beast pouch to rest. At this moment, more than 30 core forging enlightened masters were sitting cross-legged on the surface of the North Sea. Xianling sect's Feng Sudao suddenly opened his eyes and calculated the time. He said, "Everyone, it's time. Since Feiling Island opened, Feiling Mountain's array formation is at its weakest. Everyone, let's attack together and block the circulation of the spirit veins at the bottom of the sea to weaken Feiling Mountain's protective array formation." Hearing this, more than 30 enlightened masters stood up and stood in their respective positions on the surface of the sea. Clearly they had formed a battle formation. Then they threw a large number of spirit stones and spiritual materials into the sea. Amidst the surging magic power, a magnificent scene was formed on the surface of the sea. All kinds of magic power radiated towards the sky, and huge waves surged on the surface of the sea like tsunamis. From afar, it looked like a heavenly palace was lifted up by the waves. At this moment, on the spiritual medicine mountain of Feiling Island, all the cultivators were looking at Feiling Mountain not far away. The spiritual power of the array formation was gradually weakening. At this moment, the entire Feiling Island seemed to be hit and shook. Wei Ziheng hurriedly turned around and said, "The enlightened masters outside the island have temporarily blocked the circulation of Feiling Island's array formation. Let's quickly break a hole in the protective array formation and rush into Feiling Mountain as soon as possible." After saying that, the group of 44 people formed a simple battle formation. Su Ziping chose a spot at the foot of Feiling Mountain with the weakest array formation and started attacking. The other forces on the spiritual medicine mountain also started attacking. They knew that whoever entered Feiling Mountain first would be the one to seize the initiative and reap the greatest benefits. Lu Ping was still swinging his goose feather sabers up and down as he and the other true spirit cultivators attacked the spots Su Ziping had chosen. 2 days had passed, but the array formation's ripples were still weakening. The spots attacked by the true spirit cultivators were as thin as a piece of paper. But even so, the array formation's light didn't break under their relentless attacks. For the next 2 days, everyone took turns to rest, recover their arcane energy and maintain their strength. At this time, Lu Ping's advantage of having abundant arcane energy showed itself. He was able to maintain the same level of power against the array formation. Even when everyone's arcane energy was depleted and had to stop to recover, Lu Ping was still attacking. This earned the admiration of the true spirit cultivators. Of course, Lu Ping would not be so stupid as to keep exhausting his magic power. He would stop to recover when his magic power was depleted to maintain his strength. Due to Lu Ping's contribution and the fact that the true spirit cultivators had 2 more people than the Xianling cultivators, the true spirit cultivators' progress was obviously faster than the Xianling cultivators. This made Zhang Weiqing quite annoyed, and he had to shorten the recovery time of the cultivators to attack the protective array formation. After Lu Ping recovered his arcane energy, he saw that the Xianling sect cultivators were gradually catching up. So he walked up to the array formation and cast out his high-grade mystic instruments, the soaring swords. He cast stone-piercing sky sword art, and bombarded the array formation. The cultivators exclaimed, "High-grade mystic instruments," and the Xianling sect cultivators were overjoyed. They looked at the flickering array formation and quickly cast their mystic instruments to help Lu Ping attack it. After Lu Ping reached the 3rd layer of the blood condensation realm, not only did his magic power skyrocket, but his divine sense was also twice as strong as a normal cultivator's. This allowed Lu Ping to control the 2 high-grade magic tools and cast the sword art with ease. In less than the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, a series of crackling sounds could be heard as the True Spirit faction's attack formation shattered. Apart from the True Spirit faction, the other cultivators' expressions changed. Lu Ping was the first to rush into the array formation. Because Feiling Mountain had a flight restriction array, flying was not allowed. Lu Ping saw a waterfall hanging down from the top of the mountain, so he sprinted towards it. Along the way, there were some 500-year-old spiritual herbs growing beside him, but Lu Ping ignored them. He used the wave-treading technique of the 8 techniques of raging waves and slid across the waterfall. Then, as if he was walking on a flight of stairs, he went against the flow of the waterfall and headed towards the top of Feiling Mountain. The true spirit cultivators who were following closely behind him spread out in groups of 2 or 3. They ran towards the top of Feiling Mountain from different directions, plucking the 500-year-old spiritual herbs along the way by force. They didn't care if the herbs' medicinal properties would be lost. Su Ziping stayed behind. After the true spirit cultivators entered, he looked at the scattered cultivators in the distance who were eyeing the entrance covetously. He smiled and slapped a talisman on the array formation. In a flash of light, the broken array formation was compressed back to the center, and soon, it was restored to its original state. Su Ziping laughed and left amidst the scolding of the cultivators. The black spirit cultivators were also at the last moment. Zhang Weiqing looked at the true spirit cultivators with a livid face and secretly hated them. He had no choice but to urge them to speed up. Finally, after 2 hours, they rushed into Feiling Mountain with half of their magic power exhausted. At this time, some cultivators of Hai Yen Sect and Shui Yen Pavilion were also making their last effort. Lu Ping went up along the river, and the spiritual medicine gardens along the way were directly crushed by Lu Ping's landslide. Lu Ping now discovered that the landslide was much more destructive to the array formation than the soaring wing dual swords. The 500-year-old spiritual herbs in the spiritual medicine gardens were quickly collected by Lu Ping. After 6 hours, Lu Ping had been rushing, breaking arrays and collecting spiritual herbs. After passing through 4 spiritual medicine gardens in a row, he had a total of 3,500-year-old spiritual herbs and 20,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Lu Ping also saw some ruins of cave mansions built on both sides of the small river, and there were 2 intact cave mansions. Lu Ping went in and saw that they were empty. Obviously, they had been searched by the cultivators who entered Fei Ling Island before. After breaking through another spiritual medicine garden, Lu Ping finally saw a new cave mansion. The protective array outside was flowing with spirit light, and obviously no one had entered. Lu Ping put a top-quality spirit recovery pill in his mouth to replenish his spirit force at any time. He cast Landslide, and broke the array in just 3 moves. Lu Ping was startled. Such a weak array formation, obviously the cultivators in the cave mansion might not be very strong. Sure enough, a moment later, Lu Ping only collected a few magic treasures and cultivation pills and came out. Lu Ping once again came across a small spirit herb garden protected by an array formation. He had to use Landslide 9 times before he finally broke through the array formation. Lu Ping couldn't help but look forward to it. Sure enough, there were 21,000-year spirit herbs growing in this small spirit herb garden. It was obviously an important location. But Lu Ping didn't have the time to be happy about it. The blasts of spells from afar indicated that cultivators from the other sects had arrived. The true spirit clan's early advantage had disappeared, and cultivators from the other sects would arrive at any time. Lu Ping spread out his divine sense in all directions. Everything within a radius of 60 zhang was within his grasp. The hidden restrictive arrays were still there. Fortunately, Lu Ping chose to follow the river up the mountain. The flowing river could often reveal the remnants of the arrays. When he reached the waist of the mountain, Lu Ping finally came across a second cave mansion. This cave mansion's protective array formation was strong. It took Lu Ping 18 strikes before it broke. The items inside did not disappoint. Lu Ping found a high-grade flying magic treasure. Looking at the cloud-like magic treasure in his hand, Lu Ping was very satisfied. The feng shui attribute also allowed Lu Ping to control it well. He just didn't know how fast it was. Now was not the time to test out the magic treasure, but it shouldn't be too slow. There was also a high-grade fire elemental mystic instrument, the fire cloud bracelet. However, it didn't match Lu Ping's elemental attribute, so he had already put it away. The 6 bottles of cultivation medicinal pellets also surprised Lu Ping. These were top-grade blood condensation realm medicinal pellets. As for the remaining spirit herbs, Lu Ping stored them in his interspatial pouch. A whole day had passed and the battles on Fei Ling Peak were getting more and more intense. But Lu Ping was puzzled. He hadn't encountered any cultivators, not even those from his sect. This puzzled Lu Ping, who was always on guard against the possibility of a battle at any time. When Lu Ping came across the 3rd cave mansion, he was already not far from the peak. This time Lu Ping knew that he had found a treasure. The 3-colored defensive formation outside clearly told Lu Ping that this was a core forging cultivator's cave mansion. Lu Ping commanded Landslide to attack the formation continuously. However, the 3-colored formation continued to shine endlessly. On the other hand, the continuous rumbling of Landslide and the scattering multicolored light attracted the attention of other cultivators. Gradually, the noise from afar could be heard. Lu Ping put away Landslide and took out a jade talisman. This was the talisman treasure that the sect had given to Lu Ping as a reward. This talisman treasure had been used once before. Lu Ping injected his arcane energy into it. With Lu Ping's current arcane energy, it only took a moment for the talisman treasure to flash with a yellow light. Then, 3 giant rocks appeared above the cave mansion. With a loud bang, the 5-colored light dimmed. However, the cave mansion was still protected. Helpless, Lu Ping could only activate the talisman treasure in his hand once more. As the jade talisman in his hand disintegrated into powder, the great defensive formation finally collapsed under the bombardment of the giant rocks. Lu Ping did not have the time to feel sorry for the talisman treasure. At that moment the noise was getting closer. Lu Ping rushed into the cave mansion. The inside of the cave mansion was as messy as before. Lu Ping looked around and only 3 items caught his attention. The first was a flying sword. The surface of this flying sword was simple and unadorned. However, Lu Ping discovered that this flying sword was exuding an astonishingly sharp qi. The vigorous sword qi contained within it seemed as if it could erupt at any moment. This should be a top-grade flying sword. Lu Ping's heart was moved. This was the first time that he had seen a top-grade flying sword. The second item was a storage ring. This storage ring was not as mystical as everyone thought it to be. It was just that its capacity was a bit bigger than an ordinary storage bag. It looked a bit flashy. Although the space of this storage ring was not small, it was equivalent to 5 exquisite storage bags. At best, it could only be a top-grade flying weapon. However, the key point was that this storage ring contained 3 things that Lu Ping had never seen before. However, he was absolutely familiar with them. A high-grade spirit stone. A high-grade spirit stone was equivalent to 10,000 low-grade spirit stones. The third item was a dawn. On a wooden shelf, Lu Ping found 3 bottles of dawn for the core forging stage. These 3 bottles of dawn were equivalent to more than a high-grade spirit stone. Chapter 100. As soon as Lu Ping left, several cultivators followed him to the front of the cave dwelling. Looking at the cave dwelling that had obviously been searched once, everyone looked at each other. After a while, a cultivator hesitantly said, "If I'm not mistaken, this should be the cave dwelling of a core forging enlightened master, right?" Everyone was silent for a while, then a cultivator said, "It seems so." Another cultivator said, "This place is not far from the mountain stream of Fei Ling Peak. Could it be the one Hu Zhenling?" The first cultivator who spoke nodded and said, "It should be him. Maybe there are other people Hu Zhenling. If he is alone, it is too outrageous." Everyone finally found a reasonable explanation. Unwilling to give up, they went back to the cave dwelling to have a look. Sure enough, they harvested some spirit herbs and spirit materials. Lu Ping's search was too hasty. He didn't want to let others know that he had obtained the core forging realm cave dwelling alone, so he just took away the things that caught his eye. There were some scattered spirit herbs, spirit pills, spirit materials and low-grade magic tools, but Lu Ping didn't care about them. When he reached the top of the mountain, Lu Ping found 2 more spirit herb gardens. Moreover, both the area and the quality of the spirit herbs were high. Lu Ping collected a total of 500 500-year-old spirit herbs and 41,000-year-old spirit herbs. At this time, Lu Ping was getting closer and closer to the top of the mountain. There were many sounds of fighting on the top of the mountain. There were also many sounds of spells and magic tools attacking the array. Obviously, the cultivators on the top of the mountain had made a major discovery, so they were competing with each other. Naturally, Lu Ping wouldn't miss it. When Lu Ping reached the top of the mountain, the first thing he noticed was not the fighting between the cultivators, but a kind of heroic atmosphere on the top of Fei Ling Peak. The whole top of the mountain was no longer a mountain top, but a world with a radius of thousands of feet. It was uneven and dusty. This was the main battlefield of the battle between the Dharma manifestation stage cultivators and Laozu. The whole Fei Ling Peak was forcibly destroyed by spells, resulting in its current appearance. This was the biggest reason why the spirit vein of Fei Ling Peak was beaten into a large spirit vein. At this time, the top of the mountain had already become the battlefield of the cultivators. The flying dust had covered everything in front of him. Everything within 10 feet was blurred, so he could only rely on his divine sense to judge the surrounding situation. Lu Ping spread out his divine sense, and every movement within a radius of 60 feet appeared in Lu Ping's mind. Hundreds of feet ahead, there seemed to be a rainbow-like light looming in the layers of dust. The stream on Fei Ling Peak originated from this peak. Lu Ping walked along the stream towards the center of the peak. The vision on both sides of the stream was relatively good. Lu Ping gradually found that the spiritual qi in the stream was gradually getting richer. It seemed that he was already close to the main vein of the legendary large spirit vein. Among the flying dust, there were magic weapons attacking from both sides of the stream from time to time, but they were all blocked by Lu Ping's soaring wings dual swords. Now was not the time to hold back. In a situation where the enemy's situation was unknown, Lu Ping could easily be besieged. Fortunately, Lu Ping's pair of high-grade flying swords had left a deep impression on people when he broke the formation at the foot of Fei Ling Peak. When the cultivators who attacked with magic weapons saw this pair of gorgeous soaring wing swords, they immediately gave up. Lu Ping advanced another 1,000 feet. This time, no cultivators came to provoke him. However, through his divine sense, Lu Ping could faintly sense that there were 2 groups of cultivators on both sides of the stream that had gathered in the direction he was going. There were 5 to 7 people on each side. It seemed that he was still being targeted. Lu Ping smiled bitterly. Fortunately, the cultivators on both sides did not know that his divine sense had already discovered them. Since that was the case, he could only make the first move and gain the upper hand. Lu Ping stretched out his left hand and landslide flew out from the ring on his left hand's ring finger. Since he had a storage ring with a larger and more convenient capacity, Lu Ping naturally would not use a storage pouch. Instead, he put all of the spirit herbs, spirit ores, spirit materials and magic weapons that he did not use on Fei Ling Island into a storage pouch. As for Lu Ping's own cultivation needs, daily use and precious items, he put them in his storage ring and carried them with him. Landslide whistled out and smashed down on the 6 people on the left side of the stream with the pressure of MT Tai. Everyone immediately cried out in alarm, "Where did this magic weapon come from? It's a high-grade magic weapon. Who is it? Who is plotting against me?" Lu Ping did not care about this. As Landslide pressed down, his soaring wing sword slashed out. When the 6 people on the left side of the stream worked together to block Landslide, with great difficulty, the male and female swords had already slashed at their waists. The 6 people immediately cried out, "It's that brat Jinling. You're courting death. 1 against 6? Aya? My arm. Help. Spare me." In the blink of an eye, 3 out of the 6 people on the left side of the stream had lost their lives in Lu Ping's divine sense. 1 lost an arm, and the other 2 escaped after being severely injured by Landslide. There were already 5 people gathered on the right side of the stream. When they heard the curses from the other side of the stream, they clearly hesitated for a moment. However, someone said something and shouted, and 5 magic weapons flew towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping used 2 high-grade magic weapons in one go, and it had already taken up more than half of his divine sense. Fortunately, before Lu Ping made his move, he discovered through his divine sense that 4 of the 6 people on the left side of the stream were cultivators from Xianling sect, which was why he attacked them first. Among the 5 people on the right side of the stream, only 2 were cultivators from Hai Yen sect and Shui Yen Pavilion. The rest were cultivators from other sects and were slightly weaker. Lu Ping threw out 5 water shield talismans in one go and blocked the 5 magic weapons. The 2 high-grade magic weapons had already returned to him. After retrieving Landslide, the soaring wing swords had already rushed over. The 5 cultivators on the right side immediately felt that something was wrong and wanted to escape. Lu Ping's soaring wing swords chased after them and only killed 1 Shui Yen Pavilion cultivator. Lu Ping went to the left side of the stream and picked up the 3 storage pouches on the ground. When he returned to the right side of the stream, De Bao had already returned with the Shui Yen Pavilion cultivator's storage pouch in his mouth. The spiritual herbs in the 4 storage pouches were obviously much more than the harvest on the spiritual herb mountain. There were more than 2,400 stalks of 500-year-old spiritual herbs and 23 stalks of 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs. The spirit stones were much more insignificant now, only 10,000 spirit stones. Lu Ping was too lazy to count the elixirs and other miscellaneous items. Lu Ping continued to move along the river bank. This time, no cultivators came looking for trouble with Lu Ping. Finally, when he was about to reach the source of the stream, Lu Ping clearly saw that the rainbow light was a cave abode's protective array. It was another core forging enlightened master's cave abode. It seemed that Fa Xiang Laozu's harvesting methods weren't very good. At this moment, a familiar voice sounded in front of him. "Is that junior martial brother Lu?" Lu Ping recognized Wei Ziheng's voice, so he said, "It's me." He walked over and asked, "Senior martial brother, how's the situation?" Wei Ziheng said, "There's good news and bad news." Lu Ping hurriedly asked for the reason and Wei Ziheng explained, "The good news is that because of junior martial brother's amazing performance, our True Spirit faction entered Fei Ling Mountain in advance and obtained more than 30 spiritual herb gardens and a few cultivators' cave abodes. After that, many cultivators came in and we also participated in it. The harvest was also considerable. The bad news is that Xianling faction cultivators Hai Yen sect and Shui Yen Pavilion cultivators coincidentally joined forces to resist our True Spirit faction. A few of our senior martial brothers were killed by them and other greedy cultivators. Now we only have 30 people left, while Xianling sect has 7 more people than us." Lu Ping thought for a moment, then said, "Now they only have 3.5 more people than us. On the way we ran into a few blind people, so I ambushed them, killing 3 and crippling 1. Wei Ziheng and the cultivators behind him said excitedly, "Good job, junior martial brother." Naturally, Lu Ping wouldn't reveal his full strength, so he only said that he ambushed them, but it still won everyone's admiration. Wei Ziheng asked about Lu Ping's harvest, but Lu Ping only said that he harvested a few spiritual herb gardens alone. Although Wei Ziheng was a little disappointed, he still said, "That's not bad, Junior Martial Brother. Junior Martial Brother, you harvested everything alone. When we split up, we only harvested 1 or 2 spiritual herb gardens alone before the other sects caught up to us. Our harvest of spiritual herbs can't compare to Junior Martial Brothers." Lu Ping heard that Wei Ziheng only emphasized spiritual herbs, so he asked, "Could it be that Senior Martial Brothers had other harvests?" Su Ziping laughed and said, "This time, we obtained an early-stage core forging cultivator's cave mansion by ourselves. We also participated in the attack of 2 core forging enlightened masters' caves with cultivators from other sects, one of which belonged to a mid-stage core forging cultivator." Lu Ping asked curiously, "How did Senior Martial Brother know whether the owner of the cave mansion was an early or mid-stage core forging cultivator?" Su Ziping was surprised. "Junior Martial Brother, you didn't know. If the cave mansion's protective formation is 3-colored, then it belongs to an early-stage core forging cultivator. If it's 5-colored, then it belongs to a mid-stage core forging cultivator. If it's 7-colored, like the one in front of us, then it belongs to a late-stage core forging cultivator." Lu Ping looked at the 7-colored cave mansion in front of him, and his heart stirred. He asked Wei Ziheng, "Then the cave mansion we found on Sensor Peak also belongs to a mid-stage core forging cultivator?" Wei Ziheng nodded in agreement. By now, Lu Ping knew that the cave dwelling he used the talisman treasure twice and used landslide. On the way here was an early 3-colored core forging realm cultivator's cave dwelling. Wei Ziheng continued, "This time, Feiling Island's harvest is better than before. In the past, when Feiling Island opened, at most 3 to 5 core forging cultivators' cave mansions were unearthed. But this time, only 7 core forging cultivators' cave mansions were unearthed, and this doesn't include the core forging cultivators' cave mansions that others don't know about. Among these 7 cave mansions, 3 were discovered by Xianling sect, Haiyan sect and Shuiyan sect, and one of them is a mid-stage core forging cultivators' cave mansion. I think the harvest from this late-stage core forging cultivators' cave mansion is not small. Many cultivators had gathered around, and the fighting gradually subsided. Everyone's eyes were on this late-stage core forging cultivators' cave mansion. At this time, there was less than a day left before Feiling Island closed. Chapter 101. Feiling Mountain finally quieted down, and the flying dust gradually settled, revealing the scene at the top of the mountain in front of everyone. At this time, the top of Feiling Mountain was clearly divided into 4 groups. Zhenling sect was left with 29 people, occupying the east side of the cave mansion. Xianling sect was on the west side with a total of 32 people. Obviously, some of them died in the battle just now. Haiyan sect and Shuiyan pavilion gathered some familiar cultivators, forming a third group of nearly 20 people, and gathered at the south side of the cave mansion. The rest of the cultivators from various sects mostly gathered at the north side of the cave mansion, and there were also cultivators scattered around. Obviously, cultivators had rushed back from all over Feiling Island in the past 2 days. The formation outside the cave mansion was obviously much more powerful than the one Lu Ping had seen before, so the cultivators at the top of the mountain couldn't see the situation inside the cave mansion. Therefore, they couldn't determine where the main entrance of the cave mansion was, and could only rely on luck to occupy a position. This kind of cave mansion's protective formation was different from Feiling Mountain's protective formation. As long as one part of the protective formation was broken, the whole formation would be broken, unlike the protective formation, which not only would the whole formation not collapse, but it would also slowly repair itself. Everyone was still in a stalemate around the cave mansion at the top of the mountain, and no one was willing to attack the formation first. Lu Ping was bored, so he had to look around the situation at the top of the mountain. The stream that Lu Ping had been following was not far away, and its source was at the center of the mountain. The spiritual energy here was rich, and it was the main vein of Feiling Mountain's large spirit vein. The stream contained rich spiritual energy, and Lu Ping suddenly understood why he was able to obtain 7 spirit herb gardens and an early core forging cultivator's cave mansion. It was because the stream from the top of the mountain contained rich spiritual energy, so Feiling sect cultivators opened up spirit herb gardens on both sides of the stream. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Especially at the source of the stream, the spiritual energy in the water was especially rich. It far exceeded the amount of spiritual energy in the spring water in his cave dwelling. He could bring some back to water the spirit herb garden. Otherwise, the spirit spring water would be wasted. Lu Ping took out a jade bottle magic tool, which was obtained by Lu Ping when he was still a blood-refining cultivator from the Cultivators Sharing Union. This jade bottle was only a low-grade magic tool, and it didn't have strong offensive power. It could be used as a storage magic tool, but its capacity wasn't large. The reason why Lu Ping had kept this low-grade magic tool until now was because it could maintain the spiritual energy of the spiritual liquid in the jade bottle. Because of this, Lu Ping had always used it to store spiritual spring water to water the spirit fields and spirit herb garden. Lu Ping took out the jade bottle and filled it with the stream water at the source. He couldn't help but feel a little regretful. He should have upgraded this jade bottle to a mid-grade magic tool or a high-grade magic tool. That way he could have stored more spiritual water. When Lu Ping arrived at the top of the mountain, Lu Ping released Debao. Unfortunately, the entire mountain was under the dual protection of the Forbidden Array and the Mountain Protection Array, so Debao couldn't go deep into the ground. This made Lu Ping's wishful thinking of collecting more spirit-gathering pearls fall through. I can't let myself have all the benefits, Lu Ping thought to himself. The stalemate in front of the abode was finally broken. No one knew who was the first to make a move, but suddenly, all kinds of magic tools and spells flew around on the top of the mountain. Accompanied by the sound of ping ping pang pang, the great array of the abode protection kept shaking. Lu Ping chose to keep a low profile this time. He took out the mid-grade flying swallow sword and joined the attack of the others. At this time, Wei Ziheng suddenly sent a voice transmission to Lu Ping. Junior Martial Brother Lu, you have the strongest magic power among us. After the array is broken, you will be the first to rush into the cave mansion and fight for the treasures inside. The other martial brothers and I will secretly block the others for you. This matter is only known to the 11 cultivators of my Zhenling. Lu Ping nodded. He knew that in front of a core forging cultivator's cave mansion, even an alliance was unreliable. Presumably, when they explored the other core forging cultivators' cave mansions, Wei Ziheng and the others had already noticed it. As the closing time of Fei Ling Island was getting closer, the people on the mountain top did their best this time. In just an hour, the grand array outside the cave mansion was extremely weakened. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Lu Ping, with the secret cooperation of the other cultivators of Zhenling, stood in front of the celestial spirit faction. Someone's magic tool became the straw that broke the camel's back. The array cracked with a roar and everything inside the cave mansion was revealed in front of everyone. The entrance of the cave mansion actually opened to the south. The cultivators of Hai Yen Sect and Shui Yen Pavilion looked happy. Lu Ping took the lead and rushed out. At this time, the cultivators of Hai Yen Sect and Shui Yen Pavilion didn't care that the two sects were friendly. They swarmed toward the entrance of the cave mansion. Naturally, the cultivators of the other sects were unwilling to be left behind. They rushed toward the cave mansion. It was unknown who made the first move, but tens of magic tools suddenly smashed down on the heads of the cultivators of the two sections. Although the cultivators of the two sects and the cultivators of the other sects were prepared, such a large-scale attack still left 4 or 5 corpses. Soon after, the mountain top became a state of chaos. The falling dust shook again and gradually covered the surroundings of the cave mansion. At the same time that Lu Ping rushed out, the cultivators of Zhenling scattered around Lu Ping. Most of the magic tools attacking from the front and the sides were blocked by their fellow disciples. Lu Ping brought out a mid-grade water attribute magic tool that he obtained from an unknown person and placed it above his head. The soaring wing sword danced in front of him, catching all the attacks that slipped through. In the blink of an eye, he arrived before the cave mansion. Lu Ping swung his left hand and landslide, like a galloping iron mountain, smashed a big hole in the wall of the cave mansion with an unstoppable momentum. Lu Ping broke through the hole and happened to meet the two cultivators of Hai Yen Sect and Shui Yen Pavilion who were the first to rush into the front hall of the cave mansion. Lu Ping saw that there were 3 paths in the front hall that led directly to the bottom of the cave mansion. He chose the path in the middle and rushed in, ignoring the two cultivators of Hai Yen Sect and Shui Yen Pavilion. At this time, a loud sound came from the west wall. Obviously, Lu Ping's method had inspired the cultivators of Shenling Sect. The two cultivators of Hai Yen Sect and Shui Yen Pavilion looked at each other, then each chose a path and rushed in. The one who rushed in after them was Zhang Weiqing of Shenling Sect. Looking at everything in the cave mansion, he wanted to go straight to the middle path. Anyone could guess that there would be the biggest harvest there. However, he seemed to have thought of something and chose the path on the left and rushed down. Following him were the cultivators of Jinling Hai Yen sect and Shui Yen sect. Both sides fought each other as soon as they met. Then the cultivators of Xianling sect also joined in. Following which, the back wall of the palace was also broken, and cultivators rushed in one after another. The front hall of the cave mansion was a mess. After Lu Ping rushed underground, he released De Bao to roam freely. After moving about 300 feet, his eyes suddenly lit up. This was an underground cave with a radius of several tens of square meters. The space was even bigger than the cave mansion in the belly of the mountain where Lu Ping lived. Lu Ping looked at a small palace built against the stone wall and rushed in. The furnishings inside the palace were extremely simple, far less luxurious than the outside. This was a place where cultivators lived and cultivated. On a stone platform, there was a grayish-white cattail hassock. On the hassock there was a purple jade slip, a jade bottle made of chalcedony, and a brocade box with layers of seals. Other than these, there was nothing else in the room. Lu Ping put away the 4 items, including the hassock, and used his divine sense to confirm that there was nothing else in the room. As soon as he walked out, De Bao appeared in front of him and pulled him to the side. Lu Ping's divine sense had already discovered a spiritual herb garden on the other side. Just as he was about to go there, he saw De Bao pulling him to the other side. Curious, he followed. Lu Ping looked at the spiritual herb garden in front of him, which was less than half an acre in size, and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although there were a few stalks of 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs in the garden, they weren't important enough to be harvested here. Listening to the noise outside the cave getting closer and closer, Lu Ping thought that it would be a waste of time to go back, so he would first harvest the spiritual herbs in this small garden. As soon as Lu Ping stepped into the spirit herb garden, the scenery in front of him changed. How was this a spirit herb garden that was less than half an acre in size? It was clearly a large spirit herb garden that was 5 acres in size. Could this be a spatial array formation? When Lu Ping was sighing at the wonders of this formation, he only heard a zhi sound. It turned out that De Bao had also come in. Lu Ping was about to praise De Bao, but found that De Bao was forcefully pulling him out. Lu Ping said, "De Bao, this is such a large spiritual herb garden, let's first collect the spiritual herbs here, it's already too late." De Bao was still unwilling to let go, and continued to pull Lu Ping's trousers. Lu Ping was helpless, and at the same time he wanted to see what De Bao was trying to do. Lu Ping took a step back, and suddenly appeared outside the spiritual herb garden. This time Lu Ping clearly felt that something was wrong. This was not a formation but more like an artifact. De Bao took Lu Ping to dig the ground for a while. Lu Ping looked at everything in front of him and finally understood. This was a large spatial artifact that allowed people to freely enter and exit. Legend has it that only Fa Xiang Laozu had this method. Was this Fa Xiang Laozu's immortal cave? Lu Ping shook his head. If this was Fa Xiang Laozu's immortal cave, the North Sea cultivators of the past would never have missed it. After all, the number of Fa Xiang Laozu and Fei Ling sect was limited. If one of them did not notice it, wouldn't the many Fa Xiang Laozus of the North Sea turn the world upside down to search for it? Lu Ping finally found the main body of this large spatial artifact. It was an open book, and the page of the book was the spiritual herb garden. Lu Ping channeled his magic power into the book, intending to refine this artifact. However, he found that the book was like a bottomless pit, devouring all of Lu Ping's magic power. The rumbling sound of magic spells coming from the entrance of the cave was getting closer and closer. Clearly, the cultivators in the front hall were restraining each other, delaying their arrival. Moreover, Lu Ping moved quickly after entering this place. Moreover, the Jinling cultivators in the front hall were intentionally or unintentionally delaying Lu Ping. That was how Lu Ping was able to seize the initiative. However, it was already too late for Lu Ping. Lu Ping placed 2 high-quality essence rejuvenating pellets in his mouth and increased the flow of arcane energy into the book-shaped mystic instrument. Finally, before anyone could enter, the book rumbled and the spirit herb garden on the ground floated up into the air. Then it slowly folded like a closed book. After that, the mystic instrument shrunk to the size of a brick and became a book about half an inch thick. The purple surface of the book was inscribed with the words, "1,000 stalks millet" in the book. Chapter 102. When a disciple of an unknown sect rushed into the cave, Lu Ping was collecting the 1,000-year-old spiritual herb from the first spiritual herb garden he found. The collection of these spiritual herbs was actually the most time-consuming. Ever since Lu Ping entered Fei Ling Island, he had only encountered 7 spiritual herb gardens along the 2 sides of the stream, and it took him 2 days to collect them. It could be seen how time-consuming it was to collect spiritual herbs. There were many things to pay attention to when collecting spiritual herbs. Otherwise, the spiritual herb itself would be damaged and its effectiveness would be greatly reduced. The higher the grade of the spiritual herb, the more so. Therefore, when the cultivator came in, Lu Ping had just started to collect the second 1,000-year-old spiritual herb. This was because Lu Ping had casually destroyed a few passages on both sides of the cave. When the cultivator saw that it was Lu Ping, he obviously hesitated for a moment because Lu Ping had shown his strength in front of everyone a few times, which was really frightening. However, this cultivator still could not resist the temptation of the 30 to 41,000-year-old spiritual herbs in the spiritual herb garden, so he slowly approached the spiritual herb garden with vigilance. Lu Ping did not stop him and only focused on collecting the third spiritual herb. Finally, the cultivator relaxed and entered the spiritual herb garden to collect. After that, more and more cultivators entered the cave and joined in the fight for the spiritual herbs. At this moment, Lu Ping finally understood the situation at Lingyao Mountain. In just a moment, the nearly 41,000-year-old spiritual herbs and nearly 1,500-year-old spiritual herbs in the 2-acre spiritual herb garden were all snatched up. Lu Ping had left long before the spiritual herbs were all collected. He only collected 9 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs and ignored the rest of the 500-year-old spiritual herbs. If he did not come out and wait for the spiritual herb garden to be finished, there would be another chaotic battle. With Lu Ping's strength, he would definitely be the target of everyone's attack. Following Lu Ping were 3 Jinling cultivators. The other true spirit disciples of Yujin School and Chongming School had no time to care about them. At that moment, there were only 4 to 6 hours left before the closing of Flying Spirit Island. The cultivators would inevitably fall into a final frenzy and begin a brutal hunt for the resources in their hands. At that moment, only the cultivators of their own sect could be trusted. Thus, the most important thing to do was to gather the disciples of Jinling. Through the explanation of a senior disciple, Lu Ping learned that Wei Ziheng and Su Ziping had each taken 2 or 3 disciples to the other 2 passages. Without another word, Lu Ping led the 3 of them into a passageway. This passage was where the cultivators of the cave abode usually concocted pills and crafted weapons. At this time it was already a mess inside. Lu Ping looked into the cave entrance and saw that Wei Ziheng and 2 other cultivators were being besieged by Xianling sect's Zhang Weiqing and his group of 7. The situation was extremely precarious, and there were also disciples from other sects fighting with each other. Zhang Weiqing sneered, "You Jinling bastards, I'll kill the 3 of you today, and our Xianling sect will win before the closing of Flying Spirit Island." Wei Ziheng didn't say anything. He just tried his best to defend against the attacks from the Xianling sect disciples. The other 2 disciples cooperated with him, but the 3 of them were already injured in many places. The 3 disciples behind Lu Ping panicked. Just as they were about to call for reinforcements, Lu Ping raised his hand to stop them. He took out his soaring sword and launched a sneak attack from the back of the Xianling sect disciples. The 3 disciples were puzzled. They were more than 40 feet away from the Xianling sect disciples, far beyond the range of a 3rd-layer blood condensation realm disciple's divine sense. How could Lu Ping launch an attack from such a distance? In the blink of an eye, the soaring sword was only 20 feet away from the Xianling sect disciples. The Xianling sect disciples' divine sense immediately detected the soaring sword's sneak attack. They screamed and tried to defend themselves, but it was already too late. One of the 2 Xianling sect disciples was killed, and the other was heavily injured. Zhang Weiqing turned around and saw Lu Ping and the other 3 disciples running towards him. He shouted viciously, "It's you again. Let's go." With that, the remaining 6 disciples quickly ran to the side. Wei Ziheng shouted, "It's not that easy." A net-like mystic instrument flew out from his hand and caught the heavily injured Xianling sect disciple. The other 2 disciples' mystic instruments had already flown over. Another Xianling sect disciple was dead. Wei Ziheng and Lu Ping didn't have time to exchange pleasantries. Since the matter was over, the 7 of them hurried out of the cave and went to another tunnel to help Su Ziping. The 3rd tunnel led to the cave abode's study room. This was where the cave abode's master spent his days studying techniques, crafting talismans and researching array formations. By the time Lu Ping and the rest arrived, the place was already ransacked. The bookshelves, tables and chairs in the study room were all smashed to pieces. When they found Su Ziping, he was leading 4 people in pursuit of a few disciples from a few other sections. The group rushed forward and smashed the 4 disciples to death with their mystic instruments, scaring the other cultivators in the cave away. Su Ziping took out a few jade slips from the dead cultivators and said happily, "Damn it, how dare they steal my Jinling's jewels? They deserve to die." In this trip to the cave abode, none of the 11 people died. Only Wei Ziheng and the other 2 were seriously injured. Everyone was naturally excited. After leaving the cave abode, they didn't linger. They avoided the peak of Fei Ling Mountain and waited for Fei Ling Island to close, and everyone was transported out. Speaking of the situation in the 3 passageways, Wei Ziheng said, "The most important benefit in the cave I was in should have been obtained by Zhang Weiqing. He was the second to enter and kill the cultivator from the water mist pavilion. He obtained a few bottles of good quality medicinal pills. It was said that they were stored in jade crystal bottles, so they should be medicinal pills for the core forging realm. The spiritual herbs, spiritual materials, and magic tools inside were also taken by him. I only took a small part of it and even got into a conflict with him over a mid-grade pill furnace. If Junior Marshal Brother Lu didn't come to help, I might have died there." Su Ziping also said, "My cave was taken by the Haiyan sect first, but I went in later and also took a lot of things. Among them was a set of inheritance jade slips about the chain formation. A few cultivators from other sects took a few. Yes, they were the unlucky guys we met on our way here. Now this set of inheritance is in our hands." Lu Ping wanted to ask them if they had jade slips about alchemy and talisman making, but seeing that both of them were looking at him, obviously expecting his harvest, Lu Ping smiled and said, "It's nothing, just a jade essence bottle." Everyone exclaimed, "It's actually a jade essence bottle? Isn't this?" Su Ziping lowered his voice but still couldn't hide the excitement on his face. He said, "It's really a jade essence bottle? According to the legends, only Dharma Fei's ancestors would use the jade essence bottle to refine their pills?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "It is indeed a jade essence bottle." Wei Ziheng also couldn't wait to ask, "Is it the abode of Dharma Fei's Laozu?" Lu Ping thought for a while and shook his head. He said, "It shouldn't be, but it should be a prominent core forging stage cultivator from Fei Ling's sect." Everyone obviously didn't believe that it would be the abode of Dharma Fei's Laozu, but they quite agreed with Lu Ping's opinion. At this time, there were only 2 hours left before Fei Ling Island closed. In order to obtain more resources, the powerful sects began to form gangs to rob the weaker cultivators. The smaller sects didn't show weakness either. When they encountered a powerful group, they would stay far away from it. When they encountered a lone cultivator, no matter which sect he was from, they would kill him without hesitation. For a moment, Fei Ling Mountain was in chaos again, but this time the battles seemed a lot more dull. Many battles started very suddenly and ended very quickly. Everyone raised their vigilance, lest the cultivators who heard the news would take advantage of them if they fought for a long time, so they all pursued a one-hit kill. At this time, Jinling's group of 11 people was extremely abrupt. They had the most people and were the most powerful, so no cultivators came to provoke them. What should they do next? Everyone looked at Wei Ziheng, Su Ziping, and Lu Ping. Wei Ziheng pondered for a while and said, "We still need to help Songhai Yujian and Chongming sects. After all, we are in an alliance. If we ignore them at the last moment, it won't look good on our sect's enlightened masters." Everyone agreed. At this time, Fei Ling's sect had gained a lot. Compared to Xian Ling's sect, their chances of winning were not small. The most important thing now was to preserve their strength and survive at the last moment. Everyone didn't split up. They searched around Fei Ling Mountain and united the cultivators from the other 3 sections. After a while, 6 or 7 people gathered. The news spread and another 4 or 5 people rushed over. At this time, Lu Ping and the others found out that Zhang Weiqing and the others from Xian Ling's sect were killing disciples from other sects on Fei Ling Mountain to gather resources. Obviously, they had realized that they were at a disadvantage in the competition with Jinling. Now all the cultivators on Fei Ling Mountain were hiding. Wei Ziheng saw that there were already 22 people gathered. This should be a force that could do whatever they wanted on Fei Ling Mountain. He said, "Let's go and find Xian Ling's sect. We can't let them mess around like this." More than 20 people from the 4 sects walked towards the area where the battle was the most intense. Along the way they found 2 or 3 disciples from the other 3 sections. 2 of them had been hiding outside Fei Ling Mountain. It was only because they wanted to teleport out of Fei Ling Island at the last moment that cultivators had to be on Fei Ling Mountain. That was why they entered Fei Ling Mountain at the last moment. They didn't expect to run into so many cultivators going crazy at the last moment. Along the way they also killed a few cultivators who didn't know what to do. Suddenly they saw a cultivator running towards Lu Ping's group in a panic from the back mountain. 3 cultivators were chasing after him. When they got closer, Lu Ping realized that the cultivator running towards them was Ai Shutao, whom he met in the Golden Sand Mine. The 3 cultivators chasing after him were also disciples from Xianling, Feiyu and Linggu sects. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. Lu Ping turned around and said, "Senior brothers, the cultivator in front is a friend of mine. Please help me kill the Xianling bastards behind us." That's how it should be. Several cultivators dashed out from both sides, cutting off the trio's escape route. Lu Ping took the lead and said, "Brother Ai Shutao, come this way." At the same time, the soaring wing sword in his hand was already swinging towards the 3 cultivators behind him. Ai Shutao's face lit up when he saw Lu Ping, but when he saw the people behind him, he hesitated. Still, he ran towards Lu Ping and whispered to Lu Ping, "Xianling sect, Haiyan sect, and Shuiyin Pavilion found a core forging cave abode." Chapter 103. By the time Ai Shutao's group of 3 noticed Jinling's group, it was already too late. They tried to send a signal to Xianling's group, but they were instantly killed by Jinling's group and their loot was divided among them. Lu Ping heard Ai Shutao's words and quickly asked what happened. Ai Shutao said, "Xianling sect, Haiyan sect, and Shuiyin Pavilion found a core forging cultivator's cave abode here. The 2 sects reached an agreement to monopolize the treasures in the abode. In order to prevent news from leaking, especially from Jinling's group, the 2 sects began to hunt and kill cultivators from other sects around the abode. After I entered Rufeiling Mountain, I accidentally bumped into the 2 sects who were preparing to break the protective array. That's why I fled here." Wei Ziheng asked, "Brother Ai, how many of them did you see?" Ai Shutao replied, "About 30 people." Wei Ziheng looked at the group behind him. Including Ai Shutao, there were 25 people. He smiled and said, "No matter what, we can't let them monopolize the treasures. Let's go and have a share." Everyone laughed. With Ai Shutao leading the way, they walked towards the cave abode at the back of the mountain. Along the way, many cultivators got some rest and joined in Jinling's group. Many cultivators were indignant at the violent methods used by the 2 sects to monopolize the treasures. Before this, they didn't dare to provoke the 2 sects because they were too powerful. But now that Jinling took the lead, they naturally joined in. Lu Ping saw more and more cultivators gathered around them. He couldn't help but sigh. In order to win the competition with Jinling, Zhang Weiqing didn't hesitate to hunt and kill cultivators from other sections. This had angered everyone. Although these cultivators didn't have much influence in their sects, they were still the best among their peers. In the future, as their cultivation levels increased, their words would have more weight, and they might not be able to tolerate Xianling sect anymore. That would be the time when Xianling sect would be in trouble. At this time, Jinling and the other sect's disciples had already gathered 40 to 50 people. They no longer had any scruples. The Xianling sect disciples who were standing guard outside the perimeter had already sent the news back. When they arrived in front of the cave, a 5-colored protective array appeared in front of them, causing them to be overjoyed. Wei Ziheng laughed as he stepped forward and said, "Fellow Taoist Zhang Weiqing of Xianling sect, fellow Taoist Si Changxing of Haiyan sect, and fellow Taoist Su Liuan of Shuiyin Pavilion. Why didn't you inform everyone on Feiling Mountain that you found such great treasures? It's not a good habit to keep everything to yourself." Zhang Weiqing was already gnashing his teeth in hatred. He stepped forward and said, "What do you want?" Wei Ziheng said with a straight face, "Every sect and family here, regardless of the number of people, send a representative. Once the cave is broken, the representatives will search inside based on their own abilities. No fighting is allowed inside the cave. Whoever makes the first move will incur the wrath of everyone when they come out. What do you think?" At this point, Zhang Weiqing had already lost his mind from anger. Obviously, he didn't notice that Wei Ziheng was plotting against him. Flustered and exasperated, he said, "Why? Putting aside the fact that this cave was discovered by us just based on strength alone, how can those sects with only 1 or 2 cultivators compare to us, Xianling sect?" As soon as Zhang Weiqing finished speaking, the cultivators present were the first to express their dissatisfaction. Wei Ziheng snorted coldly and said, "Zhang Weiqing, since you're talking about strength, fine, I Jinling have 11 cultivators. I Jinling am the strongest among all the sects here. If we're talking about losing out, I Jinling didn't even say that I'm not willing. What can your Xianling sect say?" Don't tell me that you, with only 8 people left, want to be on equal footing with me, Jinling? The cultivators present were already in an uproar, criticizing Xianling's sect one after another. At this point, Zhang Weiqing already knew that he had fallen into Wei Ziheng's trap. With a furious expression, he was about to say something when Shui Yen Pavilion Su Liyuan, who had already seen through the situation, said in a crisp voice, "If that's the case, then we'll do as fellow Taoist Wei says." Hai Yin sect and Shui Yen Pavilion were on the same side, so Si Changxing also agreed. Zhang Weiqing saw that he couldn't offend the crowd, so he had no choice but to comply. At this moment, the happiest people were the disciples from the small sects present. They were either alone or in pairs, so they didn't expect to see the scenery of the core forging cave abode. But now that the opportunity was right in front of them, they were naturally ecstatic. Their gazes towards Jinling's group also became a lot friendlier. The closing time of Fei Ling Island was getting closer and closer. Immediately, everyone worked together and broke the array formation. Out of the 70 to 80 cultivators present, only 15 representatives came out. One had to know that there were a total of 30 sects participating in the opening of Fei Ling Island. Although the 10 largest sects took up 3/4 of the quota, and there were still cultivators hiding in the corners of Fei Ling Mountain who didn't participate in this operation, the fact that there were only 15 representatives still sent chills down the hearts of the cultivators present. Lu Ping still represented Jinling. It wasn't because Lu Ping was the strongest, nor was it because Wei Ziheng had yet to recover from his injuries, but because when Lu Ping rescued Wei Ziheng, everyone saw how powerful his divine sense was. It could cover a distance of more than 400 feet, which naturally gave him an advantage when searching for treasures in the cave abode. Lu Ping boldly stood in the middle of the group of 15 people, facing the cave abode's main entrance. No one had any objections. Jinling was the strongest at the moment, so this kind of treatment was naturally given to him. Zhang Weiqing, Su Liyuan, and the others didn't say anything either. At the moment they were in a disadvantageous position. Besides, most of the people present had seen Lu Ping's strength. His pair of high-grade flying swords were truly incomparably sharp, and there were even rumors that he could easily control 2 high-grade magic tools. Although no one believed it, they all guessed that he should have another high-grade magic tool on him. With only 15 minutes left, the 15 people rushed into the cave abode. As the only cultivator from the AI clan, AI Shu Tao also followed the crowd into the cave abode. How could a cave abode withstand 15 cultivators raiding it? Not to mention that the most valuable items were usually carried by the owner at all times, so there wouldn't be anything good left inside. After a series of clanking sounds, Lu Ping was the first to come out. He handed Wei Ziheng 3 jade crystal bottles, a top-grade defensive magic tool, the wooden rattan armor, and a bottle of blood-condensing pills. It was indeed a bottle of blood-condensing pills, a total of 10 pills. Lu Ping initially thought that Wei Ziheng was also an expert in alchemy, but he didn't find anything like an alchemy furnace in the cave abode. Seeing that most of the items in the cave abode had already been claimed, and the remaining items didn't interest him, he came out first. Wei Ziheng didn't expect that Lu Ping would bring out so many good items in one trip, and he was instantly overjoyed. After that, everyone also left the cave abode. AI Shu Tao found Lu Ping and told him in private that he found a set of 6 mid-grade magic tools. When combined, the power was equivalent to a high-grade magic tool. When he reached the mid-blood condensation realm, he would be able to try using them. Lu Ping remembered that day in the heavenly gold sand mine. AI Shu Tao's set of mother-child flying daggers blocked the attacks of 2 cultivators of the same level. Lu Ping knew that AI Shu Tao was good at using sets of magic tools, so he congratulated him. While the two were talking, Fei Ling Mountain shook again. It was finally time for Fei Ling Island to close. Every cultivator had a teleportation talisman given to them by their sect's elders. At this moment, all the cultivators turned into a ball of white light. After the white light flashed, all the cultivators disappeared from Fei Ling Mountain. At this time, on the sea surface, more than 30 core forging enlightened masters once again lined up to summon the teleportation array. The platform of the teleportation array also rose from the bottom of the sea. After a burst of white light, everyone from Fei Ling Mountain appeared on the platform. When the enlightened masters saw the 80 to 90 people on the platform, they frowned. They didn't have time to ask why and quickly ordered their juniors to come down from the platform. Then, the platform rumbled and sank to the bottom of the sea again. The opening of Fei Ling Island once every 500 years had finally ended, and it was waiting for another 500 years for people to visit it again. In the past, during the opening of Feiling Island, although there were many battles among the 200 cultivators who entered the island, about 60 to 70% of the cultivators survived. This time, the opening of Feiling Island was reversed, and the number of cultivators who died directly reached 60%. When the enlightened masters of the various sects returned, they carefully inquired about what happened on Feiling Island. When they heard that a total of 9 core forging stage cultivators' cave dwellings were unearthed on Feiling Island, even these enlightened masters were surprised. Although cultivators would often carry their valuables with them when they left their immortal caves, and there wouldn't be too many good things in their immortal caves, but there were always exceptions to everything. No one knew if there would be any unexpected items that would be passed down. Lu Ping's expression was calm. Only he knew that there were actually 10 core forging stage cave dwellings on the island. People might suspect that he obtained one alone, but he didn't leave behind any evidence, so they could only guess. The cultivators of the small sects cast envious gazes at the top 10 sects of the North Sea, namely the True Spirit 4 sects, the Profound Spirit 4 sects, the Ocean Flame sect and the Mistwater Pavilion. Obviously, the biggest benefits on the island were obtained by the disciples of these 10 sections. At the same time, everyone knew about the bet between the True Spirit 4 sects and the Profound Spirit 4 sects, so they were waiting for a good show to unfold. When Feng Shutao saw that his sect's disciples were missing Jinling and the other 2, and the Xianling sect's disciples only returned with 22 disciples, which was even worse than the True Spirit sect's 27 disciples, he knew that they were going to lose this bet. As expected, this was just a competition between early blood condensation cultivators. The enlightened masters present didn't care that the competition between the two sects would escalate to the level of their sects because of such a small matter. Hence, they clamored for the disciples of the two sects to start the treasure battle to determine the winner. The first to start was the competition between the disciples of Chongming sect and Linggu sect. Although Chongming sect had 2 more disciples than Linggu sect, the last 2 cultivators that Lu Ping and the others encountered were Chongming sect's disciples. The 2 disciples' harvest was only a quarter of the others. In the end, Chongming sect lost the bet with Linggu sect, and half of Feiling Island's harvest was taken by Linggu sect. The 2 Chongming sect's disciples were ashamed. Chapter 104. Although Chongming sect lost the bet due to the poor performance of its 2 disciples on Feiling Island, the enlightened masters didn't say anything. After all, the 2 sects were ranked at the bottom of the top 10 sects in the North Sea, so it didn't mean anything. Moreover, Jinling was calm and composed about it. As expected, in the subsequent competition of treasures between the Jade Sword faction and the Soaring Feather faction, the Jade Sword faction defeated the Soaring Feather faction with a slight advantage. The 5 cultivators from the Soaring Feather faction brought out a total of 5,500-year-old spiritual grasses and 21,000-year-old spiritual grasses, causing the cultivators from the Jade Sword faction to feel dejected. As for the Jade Sword faction's sage Duan Langxian, he chuckled and took away half of the spiritual grasses from the Soaring Feather faction. When it came to the Azure Sea sect and the Azure Wave sect's treasure battle, there was no more suspense. The 7 people from the Azure Sea sect took out 9,000 stalks of 500-year spirit herbs and 40 stalks of 1,000-year spirit herbs, overshadowing the 7,500 stalks of 500-year spirit herbs and 36 stalks of 1,000-year spirit herbs. When Songhai sect's enlightened master took away half of Songlang sect's spiritual herbs, Songlang sect's enlightened master's expression changed. Obviously, the loss of these spiritual herbs made the enlightened master's heart ache. At this time, everyone's attention was on Zhenling sect and Xianling sect. In fact, there wasn't much suspense in the battle between the 2 sections. After all, Zhenling sect had 11 disciples who survived, which was the sect with the highest survival rate among all the sects in the North Sea, 3 more than Xianling sect. However, everyone was concerned about the number of spiritual herbs, not the outcome. They were especially looking forward to Jinling's harvest. After Xianling sect's cultivators returned, they kept discussing something. From time to time, Zhang Weiqing would respectfully ask Feng Shutao and the others for instructions. Looking at Feng Shutao's nonchalant expression, no one could guess what Xianling sect was planning. Finally, Zhang Weiqing seemed to have made up his mind. Seeing the many cultivators on the sea, including the core forging enlightened masters, looking at them, he no longer hesitated and revealed his harvest. On the other hand, the enlightened masters didn't think that they were faking it. Firstly, the enlightened masters couldn't afford to offend them. Secondly, when they entered Fei Ling Island, they were given a special storage bag. Lu Ping and the rest could only store their spiritual herbs in this storage bag. Therefore, even if they knew that they were going to lose, they couldn't hide a portion of their spiritual herbs. Moreover, Xianling sect was the leader of the North Sea's major sects, so they couldn't do such a thing. The moment the 8 Xianling sect disciples took out the spirit herbs, the cultivators at the scene gasped in surprise. The enlightened masters from the various sects also raised their eyebrows. There were even a few enlightened masters who harumphed loudly. There were more than 14,000 stalks of 500-year-old spirit herbs and nearly 100 stalks of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs on the ground. These things were enough to move every enlightened being present. However, a considerable portion of these spirit herbs were obtained by Xianling sect disciples from other sects at the last moment, so the enlightened masters from other sects were dissatisfied. Junling Wei Ziheng and the rest looked at each other. Other than Lu Ping, the other 10 people threw the storage bags in their hands into the air. Instantly, more than 200 jade boxes appeared in the air. When the jade boxes were opened, 18,000 stalks of 500-year-old spirit herbs appeared in front of everyone. Among them, 10 boxes made of jade crystals were particularly eye-catching. The medicinal fragrance and rich spiritual energy fluctuations of the 121,000-year-old spirit herbs attracted the attention of all the cultivators present. At this time, even the enlightened masters at the scene were envious. Junling Master Lu Xianling and enlightened Master Guoxianshan didn't know why Lu Ping didn't show his harvest, but they were already very satisfied with it. At this time, Lu Ping wasn't deliberately looking down on the 2 sects' treasures. Instead, he was busy sorting out the harvest in his storage bag. During this trip to Fei Ling Island, Lu Ping's harvest was simply heaven-defying. It was so much that he couldn't believe it and even felt a little guilty. Thinking that most of these harvests would eventually be handed over to the sect, Lu Ping was a little unwilling, but he also knew that this was an opportunity provided by the sect. Every time Fei Ling Island was opened, the sect also needed to spend a lot of resources and the true essence of a core forging realm enlightened master, so it was understandable for the sect to make such a rule. The 2 enlightened masters from Junling had long noticed that Lu Ping's divine sense had been exploring the storage bag. Seeing that the other disciples didn't warn him, they didn't say anything. They were just curious about this young man's harvest. How could he make the other 10 people approve of his special performance? Looking at Junling's harvest, Zhang Weiqing was furious. Although he expected that he would lose, he didn't expect that he would lose so miserably. Looking at enlightened Master Feng Sudao's slightly narrowed eyes, Zhang Weiqing felt a chill down his spine. He suddenly remembered that he had asked the enlightened masters from his sect for permission. Although he didn't get a reply, didn't that mean that they didn't object? Zhang Weiqing's mind immediately became active. He thought about his harvest in the core forging realm abode, especially that thing. If he took it out, he would definitely turn defeat into victory. He couldn't care so much now. With an idea in mind, Zhang Weiqing stepped forward and bowed to the surrounding enlightened masters, saying, "Esteemed masters, although Xianling sect doesn't have as many spiritual herbs as Junling, the harvest on Fei Ling Island isn't just spiritual herbs. This junior thinks that other than spiritual herbs, other harvests should also be part of the contents of this bet. Therefore, this junior would like to ask for permission to expand the contents of the treasure battle." The enlightened masters didn't expect that a junior from Xianling sect would make such a suggestion. They all looked at enlightened Master Feng Sudao, but Feng Sudao was unperturbed and didn't express his opinion at all. The rest of the enlightened masters were more than happy to continue watching the 2 sects' disciples compete for treasures. Previously, the harvest of the 2 sects' spiritual herbs had already moved the enlightened masters. Now that the junior from Xianling sect had made a suggestion, it was obvious that he had a treasure that could turn defeat into victory. Naturally, the enlightened masters were excited and wanted to see what other harvests the 2 sects' disciples had. Enlightened Master Lu Xianling smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Feng, is this also your sect's intention?" Feng Sudao opened his eyes slightly and said, "The juniors are messing around. Let them be. We are just here to watch the show." Enlightened Master Lu cursed under his breath, but he couldn't figure out what Xianling sect had up their sleeves. He looked at Wei Ziheng and the others and saw the disdainful look in his disciples' eyes. "Zhang Weiqing, you're courting death." Enlightened Master Lu had an idea and said, "Since fellow Taoist Feng doesn't object, that means you agree. The scope of the treasure battle between Zhenling sect and Xianling sect will be expanded. Our disciples can display whatever they want on Fei Ling Island, and the loser will have to give half of their harvest to the loser. Enlightened Master Lu wasn't someone who was easy to deal with. Since you, Feng Sudao, want to fool around, then I, Lu Xianling, will make sure that you won't regret it. I only hope that the juniors can really win against Xianling's sect. Seeing that things were going according to his plan, Zhang Weiqing's spirit was lifted. He said, "We also obtained 96 bottles of blood condensation realm medicinal pills from our trip to Fei Ling Island. Please, enlightened masters, have a look." With their divine senses, the enlightened masters knew that the medicinal pills in the bottles were real, so they nodded slightly. Su Ziping snickered. "Zhang Weiqing, you really don't want to give up. Then let me show you my harvest from Zhenling." Then he placed 110 jade bottles on the table. Inside were blood condensation realm medicinal pills. Hai Yin sect's enlightened master Hong Yanping pointed at Lu Ping and smiled. "Did this disciple of your sect also find a place to hide on Fei Ling Island for 18 days? Why aren't there any of his things in there?" After enlightened master Hong said that, he saw the disciples of his sect and the other sects who participated in the trip to Fei Ling Island had a strange expression on their faces. Even Xianling sect's Zhang Weiqing's expression changed. Shui Yin Pavilion's enlightened master Han Rian smiled and said, "Senior Marshal Brother Hong, there's something you don't know. According to my disciples, this little fellow from Zhenling is probably the biggest winner of this trip to Fei Ling Island." Lu Ping had just roughly counted his harvest when he heard the two enlightened masters talking about him. His heart skipped a beat. He knew that he had overlooked something. At this moment, enlightened master Guoxianshan said, "Kid, take out your treasures and let everyone see them. Even old Guo is not happy with you hiding them like this." Lu Ping was stunned. At this time, Wei Ziheng had already told Lu Ping about what happened. Only then did Lu Ping look at Zhang Weiqing. With a wave of his hand, 50 to 60 bottles of blood condensation realm medicinal pills appeared on the ground. These were Lu Ping's harvest from Fei Ling Island's cave abode and from killing cultivators from other sections. Lu Ping's extraordinary actions caused an uproar among the blood condensation cultivators. The 30-plus enlightened masters all looked at Lu Ping. Lu Ping immediately felt like there was a dagger on his back. Enlightened Master Guoxianshan laughed and said, "Not bad, not bad. You didn't embarrass me, Zhenling. I old Gua make the decision on my own. You can keep half of these medicinal pills." As enlightened Master Gua spoke, an imposing aura enveloped him. The sharp gazes of the enlightened masters were instantly blocked. Lu Ping immediately felt the pressure on him lessening. When he heard that he could keep half of the medicinal pills for cultivation, he was in a good mood. Zhang Weiqing didn't expect that Lu Ping's actions would be able to widen the gap between the two sections. He felt even more indignant. So, he and the other 7 people took out another 10 jade crystal bottles. These bottles contained medicinal pills for core forging cultivators. This already caused the enlightened masters to look at them with envy. As once cultivation increased, medicinal pills suitable for cultivation became even more difficult to obtain. Take Zhenling for example. If medicinal pills for the blood refining realm were the lowest guarantee, then medicinal pills for the blood condensation realm were a limited supply. At the core forging realm, there were too many medicinal pills for core forging realm cultivators. From this, one could see how precious these 10 bottles of medicinal pills were. Wei Ziheng placed the jade crystal bottles that the other Zhenling cultivators obtained on the ground. There were a total of 10 bottles. Just as Zhang Weiqing heaved a sigh of relief, he saw Lu Ping take out another 5 jade crystal bottles with a wave of his hand. Zhang Weiqing's breath caught in his throat and he coughed repeatedly. This time, not only the other enlightened masters, even enlightened Master Guoxianshan was shocked. Enlightened Master Lu, on the other hand, was full of smiles. Chapter 105. Lu Ping was already cursing. Zhang Weiqing knew that he was going to lose, but he still wanted to force Lu Ping to hand over all his treasures. Lu Ping had been thinking about how to hide some of the spirit herbs and pills for his own cultivation and pill concoction. But now Zhang Weiqing had revealed all his treasures in the open. Even if he wanted to play some tricks, it would be impossible. Fortunately, this kind of treasure competition was only limited to resources related to cultivation. If magic tools, spirit stones and so on were included, Lu Ping would cry to death. At this time Zhang Weiqing was forced to the edge of a cliff. It was his suggestion that forced Xianling sect to reveal all their treasures. But in the end they still lost to Zhenling. Seeing that half of the sect's treasures were about to be taken away by Zhenling, Zhang Weiqing could already feel perfected master Feng Shuzao's murderous gaze lingering on his neck. Zhang Weiqing looked like a gambler with bloodshot eyes. Suddenly, he carefully took out a jade box that was sealed with a spirit-sealing talisman. The 30 perfected masters' eyes lit up. They were all knowledgeable people. Naturally, they knew that the spirit-sealing talisman was the work of a core forging perfected master. Then what was inside the box was naturally exciting. Zhang Weiqing's bloodshot eyes were filled with killing intent. He looked at Lu Ping and said, "This is the last treasure of Shenling's sect. It is also our biggest treasure on Feiling Island. If you can win this, then there's no need to compete anymore." As he finished speaking, he removed the spirit-sealing talisman and opened the box. The perfected masters gasped in shock. Feng Shuzhao quickly took a few steps forward. When he saw what was inside the box, his expression finally changed. "This is spiritual item. Mystic grade, low grade, meteorite gold." The discussions of the perfected masters shocked the blood condensation cultivators. They were shocked at the perfected master's loss of composure. Then they were shocked at the preciousness of a spiritual item. Meteorite gold was a metal-type spiritual item. Even though it was the lowest grade among spiritual items, mystic grade, low grade, every kind of spiritual item was a rare treasure. It meant that a core forging enlightened master could advance from early stage to mid-stage, or even mid-stage to late stage. It was something that every perfected master wanted. It was common in the cultivation world for core forging enlightened masters to fight life-or-death battles for spiritual items. This was Zhang Weiqing's last resort, and it was also his greatest trump card to turn the tables. At this moment, Feng Shutao finally stroked his beard in satisfaction. All the enlightened masters in his sect also believed that Jinling's sect would definitely lose. Enlightened Master Lu and Enlightened Master Guo's confidence began to waver as well. The only ones who remained calm were Lu Ping, Wei Ziheng, and the others. The spiritual masters present immediately discovered this situation, and the noise on the scene immediately quieted down. However, the spiritual masters in private were still discussing incessantly. "These kids are so calm. Do they have more tricks up their sleeves? I don't think so. I don't think Jinling's kids know how precious spiritual items are. It's hard to say. Maybe they have a spiritual item with them. Spiritual items are extremely rare. Shenling sect's cultivators are lucky enough to get one. If Jinling gets another one, there might be some core forging cultivators who destroy their own cultivation to look for a spiritual item the next time True Spirit Island opens. Or maybe it's a spiritual pill that Laozu cultivators use. That's even more impossible. You don't even sound like you. Dharma Laozu cultivators only have a few types of spiritual pills, and each of them is comparable to a spiritual item. But don't forget, Feiling Island was plowed by dozens of Laozu cultivators. How could there be anything left? The perfected masters expressed their opinions. Perfected Guoxianshan was getting impatient. He shouted, "Kids, if you have any other tricks up your sleeves, use them now. Otherwise, you'll lose half of the items on the ground." Wei Ziheng and the others looked at Lu Ping. The perfected masters couldn't help but look forward to seeing if this youngster, who had spent so much during the treasure battles, would bring them another surprise. Lu Ping, on the other hand, seemed to be plotting something in his mind. However, to the others, Lu Ping seemed to be hesitating about something. The perfected masters naturally thought that Lu Ping did not have a treasure that was comparable to the fallen essence gold. Perfected Guoxianshan was the first to change his expression. Perfected Master Lu Shenling also had a serious look on his face. No one had expected that the disciples of Feiling Island would reap such a huge harvest. It was so huge that even the perfected masters of core forging realm found it hard to choose. At this time, no matter who lost, half of the resources would be worth hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. Even for Zhenling sect and Shenling sect, it was like cutting off their flesh. At this time, Feng Sudao suddenly said, "Kid, it's normal if you can't take out a treasure of equal value. After all, heaven and earth spiritual treasures belong to the virtuous ones. It's just that you haven't taken out the spirit herbs from Feiling Island yet. Are you trying to cheat?" Feng Sudao was talking nonsense. Just now, Shenling sect was suppressed by Jinling. Even without Lu Ping's help, Jinling was far ahead in the gathering of spirit herbs. At that time, none of the perfected masters asked Lu Ping to take out the spirit herbs. Now that Feng Sudao thought that victory was in his grasp, he started to scheme for the spirit herbs in Lu Ping's hands. Perfected Guoxianshan snorted angrily. "Old dog Feng, you shameless bastard." Feng Sudao sneered. "I'm speaking the truth. What did I say wrong? Do you want to enlighten me? Perfected Guxianshan snorted coldly. He put on a straight face and stopped talking. At this time a young voice suddenly said, "What Perfected Master Feng said is reasonable. According to Perfected Master, if I Jinling win, I Jinling will get half of this fallen gold essence. Am I right?" The person who spoke was Lu Ping. Feng Sudao's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that this kid really has a treasure that is comparable to the fallen gold essence? If so, what I said just now would be like shooting myself in the foot. However, as a perfected master in the late stage of core forging, how could he go back on his words in front of so many people? Not to mention he didn't believe that Lu Ping could really take out a treasure that is comparable to a heaven and earth spiritual treasure. Hence, Feng Sudao looked at Lu Ping with disdain and said, "Of course." His words were resolute and decisive, showing the decisive style of a core forging enlightened master. All the disciples looked at him with admiration. "Oh," Lu Ping said, "I'm sure Perfected Master's words carry enormous weight." After saying that, he flipped a storage bag on the ground. Nearly 7,000 stalks of 500-year-old spiritual herbs and 120 stalks of 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs fell in the middle of Jinling's pile of spiritual herbs. Even Wei Ziheng, Su Ziping, and the others who came to Fei Ling Island with him didn't know that Lu Ping had collected so many spiritual herbs. They were all surprised. On the other hand, Feng Sudao, Zhang Weiqing, and the other Xianling sect cultivators were overjoyed. Zhang Weiqing and the others had guessed that Lu Ping's harvest was bountiful, but they didn't expect it to be this bountiful. Lu Ping looked at the spiritual herbs on the ground and counted them in his heart. Only then did he realize that about half of them were his spoils of war. In the 18 days since Fei Ling Island opened, the number of cultivators who died in his hands had reached 23. Out of the 200 cultivators who entered Fei Ling Island, almost 1 out of every 8 died in his hands. Lu Ping looked at the greedy expressions on Zhang Weiqing and the others. He turned to Enlightened Master Lu and Enlightened Master Gua and said, "Two enlightened masters, disciple found a dying flame on Fei Ling Island. Disciple's knowledge is shallow, so I don't know what kind of spiritual fire it is. I'd like to ask the two enlightened masters to appraise it." Having said that, Lu Ping took out a spirit gathering plate that he found in the secret underground chamber of the artifact refining hall. The bean-sized flame on the plate had been nurtured by Lu Ping with dozens of mid-grade spirit stones over the past half a month. It was no longer on the verge of death. Instead, it had swelled to twice its original size. It was lively and full of vitality once again. When Lu Ping took out the spirit gathering plate, dozens of divine senses had already wrapped around the flame on the plate. Several enlightened masters involuntarily took a few steps in Lu Ping's direction. Enlightened Master Guxianshan shouted angrily, "Brat, you actually got such a good thing." Although Enlightened Master Guo was talking to Lu Ping, his tone was directed towards the enlightened masters who were eager to give it a try. In a flash, he appeared in front of Lu Ping and took the spirit gathering plate in his hand. Lu Ping knew that once he took out the flame, it might cause a violent reaction from the enlightened masters present. Therefore, when he saw Enlightened Master Guo coming to his side, he handed the spirit gathering plate to him. Otherwise, there was no guarantee that some evil enlightened master wouldn't casually kill him and snatch the spiritual fire from his hand. The enlightened masters who were disturbed by the spiritual fire withdrew their outstretched feet in embarrassment. Enlightened Master Lu took a step forward and stood next to Enlightened Master Gua. He said, "Mid-grade spiritual fire, geocentric melting flame. What else does fellow Taoist Feng have to say?" At this time, Enlightened Master Feng Shutao was stunned by this dramatic turn of events. When he heard Enlightened Master Lu's words, he angrily flung his sleeves, turned around and flew in the direction of Xianling's sect. He had lost all his face today. Seeing that Feng Shutao had left on his own, Enlightened Master Lu didn't make things difficult for him. Instead, he turned to another Enlightened Master of Xianling sect and said, "Enlightened Master Lin, how do you think we should split the meteorite gold?" Enlightened Master Lin looked at senior brother Feng, who left in a huff, and smiled helplessly. He couldn't leave now. Otherwise, Xianling sect would go back on its word, and how would it have a foothold in the North Sea in the future? Enlightened Master Lin pondered for a while and said, "Enlightened Master Lu, you should know that once it is split, not only will the spiritual item's vitality be greatly damaged, its effectiveness will also be greatly reduced. Can you allow me to find a replacement after I return to my sect?" Enlightened Master Lu knew that it was enough to force Xianling sect to admit defeat when it came to spiritual items. If he insisted on making a fuss about the spiritual item, Xianling sect might get angry and find an excuse to renege on their debt. So he said, in that case I Jinling will not go too far. All the enlightened masters from the various sects can be my witnesses. I will give your sect 1 month to find a replacement. After 1 month, I believe Xianling's sect will be able to maintain its position in the North Sea. Enlightened Master Lin didn't have the mood to stay any longer. After he agreed, he left with Zhang Weiqing and the others, who looked as if they had lost their parents, and left with half of the spiritual herbs and spiritual pills. Jinling won the battle of treasures and Xianling's sect lost completely. Chapter 106. On the way back to Jinling, perfected Guxianshan asked, Kid, when I saw Xianling's sect showing off with the fallen adamantine, the other kids were calm. Obviously they knew you had something better than the fallen adamantine. But when you took out the core melting flame they were in disbelief. What? Lu Ping looked at Guxianshan in surprise. He initially thought that enlightened Master Lu would be the one to reveal this flaw, but he didn't expect enlightened Master Guo to have such sharp eyes. These enlightened masters had spent hundreds of years to reach where they were today, and during this time they had experienced many storms. None of them were easy to deal with. Lu Ping knew these things couldn't be kept a secret. He was only planning how to get the most out of the sect's cooperation with the sect. Lu Ping didn't say anything. He quietly took out a jade essence bottle from his storage bag. As soon as the jade essence bottle appeared, Jinren Gui gasped. Even Jinren Lu, who had always been elegant, felt his face burning. Enlightened Master Lu took the jade essence bottle from Lu Ping's hand, opened the cork and shouted excitedly, Spirit forging pellets. There are 8 of them. What? Perfected Guo couldn't believe it. He couldn't wait to take the bottle from Perfected Lu and confirm it again. It really is the spirit forging pill. The 2 perfected masters calmed down immediately. Perfected Lu said, You all thought Lu Ping would take out the spirit forging pill in the treasure competition, right? In that case the earth core melting flame was obtained by Lu Ping alone. Everyone nodded. Perfected Lu said seriously, It's good that Lu Ping didn't take out the spirit forging pill in the treasure competition. Let's stop talking about the spirit forging pill today. The 11 of you have never obtained any spirit forging pill from Feiling Island. Do you understand? Lu Ping and the others quickly nodded. They were curious about the spirit forging pill's use. Perfected Gui said, With this bottle of spirit forging pill, Senior Brother Zhang's chances of breaking through to the Dharma phase will be much higher. Taoist Master Lu also smiled and said, I've already sent out the news. I'm afraid Senior Brother Jiang already knows that we have obtained the spirit forging pill. Then he looked at the confused expressions on Lu Ping and the others' faces. He smiled and said, This spirit forging pill can increase the quality of a core forging cultivator's golden core and increase the chances of advancing. It is the most important pill for core forging cultivators to increase their cultivation level. However, its main use is when a late core forging cultivator uses a spirit treasure to forge his golden core for the 3rd time to break through to the Dharma stage. Therefore, although this bottle does not contain Dharma pills, the value of the spirit forging pills is even higher than normal Dharma pills. As for spirit treasures, anything below the earth grade is not as valuable as these 8 spirit forging pills. Once everyone returned to Tianling Mountain, Lu Ping was summoned by Perfected Jiang Xianlin. Perfected Jiang Xuanlin's cave was located on the mountainside closest to the peak of Tianling Mountain. This also showed Perfected Jiang Xuanlin's status among the core forging cultivators. Perfected Jiang Xianlin looked at the spirit forging pills in his hand and said, 8 spirit forging pills. At least 2 late core forging cultivators will owe you a favor. You also have a heaven and earth spirit fire that can help a mid-core forging cultivator, and a few bottles of core forging pills. Even I am jealous of you. Tell me, kid, what do you want? This was exactly what Lu Ping was waiting for. He didn't hesitate to reveal the earth core melting flame in the treasure competition. Other than the fact that he had a better indigo spirit fire and that he didn't cultivate a fire elemental cultivation technique, the most important reason was that he wanted to exchange it with the sect. It was impossible to play tricks with these perfected cultivators. Lu Ping said without hesitation, I want a piece of soul-nurturing wood. Perfected Jiang Xianlin pointed at Lu Ping and smiled. I knew you wouldn't be easy to get rid of. You brought a piece of soul-nurturing wood that is of the same grade as the earth core melting flame. Fine, for the sake of this spirit-forging pill, this old Taoist can only put aside his old face and help you. Fortunately, your actions on Fei Ling Island this time have helped our sect gain face and benefits. There should be a few people who will speak up for you. Lu Ping hurriedly thanked Perfected Jiang Xianlin. Perfected Jiang waved his hand and said, "You have made a great contribution this time. The sect will definitely reward you. However, I'm afraid you won't be able to keep those 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Our sect's pill refiners will come looking for you soon. As for how you will bargain with those sect masters, that will depend on your ability." The sect's rewards came quickly. Wei Ziheng and the others each received a high-grade spirit stone and 5 bottles of blood condensation realm pills. They were also allowed to enter the blood condensation realm's vault to choose 3 items. Lu Ping's reward was slightly more generous. Other than a piece of mystic-class mid-tier soul-nurturing wood, there was also a high-grade spirit stone and 50 mid-grade spirit stones in his storage ring. Lu Ping chose to postpone his 3 trips to the blood condensation realm's vault. He was only at the 3rd layer of the blood condensation realm, and he had enough pills and magic tools for the next 2 years. He was in no hurry to choose. Because of Perfected Master Guo's approval, Lu Ping kept half of the 60 bottles of blood condensation realm pills he obtained. Because of the 5 bottles of core forging realm pills, he added another 10 bottles. Lu Ping kept 2,300 stalks of 500-year-old spiritual herbs and 40 stalks of 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs. As expected, these items attracted pill refiner Jinling's attention. "You're the kid who got lucky on Failing Island, right? Give me all your 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs. I have a few bottles of blood condensation realm pills with me. It's enough for you to cultivate for a year." "Alright, I'll take the 500-year-old spiritual herbs with me too. I'll leave a few more bottles for you." Lu Ping looked at the man in front of him. He looked dignified, but in reality he was full of arrogance. He said indifferently, "I'm sorry, I still need these spiritual herbs for practice. I can't leave them for you." The arrogant pill refiner was choked to death. He pointed at Lu Ping and stammered, You? For a long time, but no words came out. Lu Ping turned around and left Tianling Mountain. He heard the pill refiner's exasperated voice coming from behind him. "You bastard, you think you can become a pill refiner? Do you have a master's inheritance? Do you know the rules of the pill refiner profession? Who uses 500-year-old spiritual herbs and 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs for practice? What a joke. What a waste of resources. Kid, don't run. You're provoking a pill refiner. As long as you're in Jinling, don't even think of getting a single pill refiner from Jinling." Not far away, Perfected Master Jiang Xianlin smiled bitterly and shook his head. He turned around and returned to his cave abode. Lu Ping didn't expect a pill refiner from his sect to be so domineering. Were all pill refiners in the cultivation world so domineering? It seemed like the high status of pill refiners had made them forget themselves. This time, Lu Ping had offended a pill refiner from Jinling's sect. His future cultivation would be hindered. Fortunately, he had accumulated some resources, so he wouldn't be lacking in cultivation resources for the next 2 years. Moreover, he had obtained some pill refinement jade slips and even some pill recipes from Failing Island. Otherwise, it would have been really difficult for him to pass the stage. The soul nurturing wood was a kind of spiritual item that had great effects on the recovery and nurturing of divine sense. Lu Ping used it to perform the soul-splitting secret technique to expand the strength of his divine sense. The soul-splitting secret technique was an extremely cruel secret technique. It required a person to tear a piece of their divine sense and nurture it in the soul-nurturing wood. Moreover, this secret technique could only be used once. When the torn piece of divine sense accumulated in the soul-nurturing wood had reached half of the cultivator's original divine sense, the split piece of divine sense would be fed back to the cultivator's original divine sense. Only then would the divine sense be expanded by half. Lu Ping had been practicing the soul-nurturing technique for more than a year. After breaking through to the 3rd layer of the blood condensation realm, his divine sense had grown from 60 meters to 64 meters. Feeling the strands of divine sense leaving his body and wrapping around the soul-nurturing wood, Lu Ping finally experienced the pain of his soul being torn apart. It was the most primitive kind of pain that came from the inside out. Lu Ping felt that the phrase, unbearable pain, wasn't enough to describe his current state. When Lu Ping thought about how many more times he would have to experience this kind of pain, he couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. However, when he thought about the arrogant and domineering attitude of pill refiners, Lu Ping had no choice but to endure this kind of pain. Who asked him to not be controlled by others? Fortunately, Lu Ping had brought back a large amount of century-old spiritual herbs. He could use them to concoct blood-refining realm pills and use them to hone his alchemy skills. After returning to Huangli Island, Lu Ping quickly went into closed-door cultivation. The ice river formation was always active. After breaking through on Feiling Island, Lu Ping had been in a constant state of tension. He was constantly on guard against the dangers around him. There was no time for systematic cultivation. Even when he recovered his spiritual energy, he had to rely on the help of the essence recovery pill. The cave abode was peaceful. After Lu Ping buried the 2 spirit-gathering pearls in the spirit vein, they gradually fused with it. The density of the spiritual energy in the cave abode slowly increased. Although this state was very slow and subtle, Lu Ping would notice the obvious difference after a period of time. When the 2 condensed blood pearls completely fused with each other, he would be able to sit on 4 miniature spirit veins. His cultivation speed would also be greatly improved. As the biggest contributor to Lu Ping's trip to Feiling Island, Debao went to sleep as soon as he returned to Huangli Island. It was as if he wanted to pay back all the hard work he had done in the past 10 days. The sea turtle was very comfortable floating in the spirit spring in the cave abode. It was named Daguay by Lu Ping. As Lu Ping's strongest pet, Lu Ping had already prepared a condensed blood pill for it to advance to the blood condensation realm. What made Lu Ping happy were the 3 green sea snake eggs. Under Lu Ping's meticulous care, the 3 treasures were finally on the verge of hatching. They were placed in the middle of the spirit spring and swayed from time to time, indicating that the population of the cave abode was about to increase. Chapter 107. In the only high-level cultivator's cave abode on Feiling Island, Lu Ping obtained 5 treasures. The first was naturally the spirit forging pill, the second was the large spatial magic tool, 1,000 stalks of millet in a book. This magic tool was originally a spirit herb garden, but it was refined into a book by a powerful cultivator of Feiling sect. The spirit herb garden in this spatial magic tool was 5 acres in size, but only 1 acre was planted with spirit herbs. There were about 40,000-year-old spirit herbs and more than 300 500-year-old spirit herbs. Because these spirit herbs were inside the magic tool, during the treasure battle, Lu Ping didn't collect the spirit herbs inside the magic tool. Thus, the enlightened masters present didn't notice that Lu Ping had such a heaven-like magic tool. After returning to his cave abode, Lu Ping reopened the magic tool and placed it on top of his own spirit herb garden. However, the spirit herb garden in this magic tool could not be expanded. This magic tool could directly connect with the spirit vein and absorb spirit energy to make the spirit herbs grow. However, the spirit vein in Lu Ping's cave abode was only enough for Lu Ping's cultivation. It was not enough to support more consumption of this magic tool. Thus, the spirit herb garden in this magic tool could only be expanded to 1 acre in size. However, the mature spirit herbs had already been collected by Lu Ping and new spirit herbs were planted. The third treasure was the praying mat that Lu Ping was sitting on. Strictly speaking, this praying mat was a formation plate. The spirit energy it could gather was far more than the small spirit gathering array praying mat that Lu Ping obtained from Lin Sheng. The fourth treasure was a jade box covered with restrictions. Lu Ping had tried to remove the restrictions on it, but no matter if he used his spiritual sense or magic power, there was no movement from the restrictions. It was obvious that Lu Ping's cultivation was not high enough, which made Lu Ping quite depressed. The fifth treasure was the jade slip in Lu Ping's hand. This jade slip recorded a cultivation method called Art of Flying Spirits Treading the Sea. This method attracted Lu Ping because it had the same origin as the art of listening to waves that Lu Ping cultivated. The method of cultivation was similar, but the final result was very different. The sea wave listening spell focused on the accumulation of magic power during cultivation. It pursued the magic power in the body to be like a great river that flowed into the sea. It was also like the sea. Under the calm surface, there was a great amount of energy. It was a kind of comprehension of water itself. It was a kind of king's cultivation method of water attribute. However, the art of soaring spirits ocean dance was different. It focused on the violent circulation of transcendence energy during cultivation. It pursued the transcendence energy within one's body to engulf everything like a raging torrent. It was also like an enraged sea that would stir up monstrous waves and destroy everything. It was a kind of mastery of water itself. It was an overbearing water attribute cultivation technique. Lu Ping kept trying to figure out the two methods, and he was more and more sure that the two methods had the same origin. There must be a close connection between the two, and they might even be the same method. Could it be that my sect's art of listening to waves itself was the inheritance of Fei Ling Island? Thinking about how the art of listening to waves appeared in my sect and was gradually perfected, it was a Dharma plane cultivator from 3,000 years ago, Laozu. It was after the destruction of Fei Ling's sect. Lu Ping's confidence increased a little. However, if these two cultivation methods were separated, then what was the reason for the separation? Lu Ping couldn't figure it out himself, so he might as well cultivate it himself and find out. Lu Ping circulated the two methods in his body at the same time, and he discovered that the two methods were like water from the same origin. The magic power produced quickly merged in his blood vessels, and there was no distinction between them. Strands of even thicker and purer magic power were born in his blood vessels, and gathered in the condensed blood pearl in his core space. This newly born magic power was even purer and thicker than the magic power that Lu Ping had cultivated before, and it was even more powerful when it was circulated. It contained an explosive and destructive aura, which was clearly a characteristic of the art of flying spirits dancing the sea. These two methods were definitely a higher level of magic power. Lu Ping was now sure of this. However, due to the interaction between the two techniques, the circulation speed of the magic power was reduced by half. Although each strand of magic power that was produced was powerful, the amount of magic power that was produced was halved compared to cultivating the waterfront wave listening mantra alone. In other words, when Lu Ping cultivated the two methods at the same time, the power and density of the magic power increased by half, but the speed of cultivation slowed down by 4 times. Lu Ping hesitated. By combining the two cultivation techniques, one's foundation would be more solid and their strength would be more powerful. However, the cultivation time would be 4 times longer. For cultivators who pursued longevity and were in a constant race against time, this was clearly a test. Perhaps this was the reason why the senior cultivators split this cultivation technique into two. Lu Ping weighed the pros and cons and finally decided to combine the two methods. Since there was a better one, why should he use the one that was one level lower? This was what Lu Ping thought. After Lu Ping returned to Huangli Island, he went into closed-door cultivation. He wanted to combine the two methods, and at the same time he wanted to reorganize his third-layer blood condensation cultivation. He also wanted to recondense the 3 condensed blood pearls that were formed from cultivating the art of listening to waves, and replace them with the art of listening to waves that Lu Ping had named. This also meant that Lu Ping's cultivation would not improve in the near future. Because Lu Ping currently only had the art of listening to waves for the blood condensation stage, and the art of flying spirits dancing the sea was a complete technique for the late Dharma stage. Therefore, Lu Ping could only refine the art of listening to waves to the blood condensation stage, and the 8 arts of listening to waves became the 12 arts of North Sea. 4 of the 8 spells of the art of listening to waves for the blood condensation stage were the same as the 8 spells of the art of flying spirits dancing the sea for the blood condensation stage. This was also the basis for Lu Ping to confirm that the two came from the same source. Lu Ping cultivated the North Sea wave listening scripture again and replaced the 3 condensed blood pearls with the North Sea wave listening scripture, arcane energy. This was a long and arduous process. Lu Ping's previous cultivation speed was already quite fast, but now he wasn't in a rush. Under the protection of the Ice River Slaughter Array, he peacefully cultivated in seclusion. With the huge amount of century-old spiritual herbs, Lu Ping's alchemy skills finally had another breakthrough. Lu Ping had finally consolidated a 50% success rate for the late blood refining stage pills. All the blood refining pills in Huangli Island's Talisman Pavilion were refined by Lu Ping. After the sea ban was lifted, the cultivators finally passed the initial probing period. A large number of cultivators began to flood into the buffer zone, and the momentum was still expanding. Huangli Island gradually became prosperous. The cultivators who stayed on the island gradually changed from the blood refining realm to the blood condensation realm. Lu Ping, Hu Lili and Qinlian's shops also started to make profits. The 20,000 spirit stones that Lu Ping spent were also gradually being recovered. Li Ziming, Lin Xing and the others who initially mocked Lu Ping for wasting spirit stones shut their mouths. They regretted not renting a few shops in the first place, but it was too late. The cultivator merchants with keen senses had already bought up all the shops on Huangli Island. In the beginning, Hu Lili was also skeptical about Lu Ping's generosity. Later on, she saw that Huangli Island was becoming more and more prosperous. First, Lu Ping went to Fei Ling Island, then he went into closed-door cultivation after he came back. He didn't care about the shops at all, so Hu Lili had no choice but to take over. Soon she became addicted to the feeling of earning spirit stones. She managed the 3 shops including Chen Lian's in an orderly manner. Chen Lian joked several times that Hu Lili was becoming more and more like a lady boss. At first Hu Lili blushed, but later on she just let it be. In the end she even sneered at Chen Lian, saying that she was willing to be a lady boss for so many spirit stones. This made Chen Lian speechless. Li Ziming and his son were envious of the 3 people's properties in the market square. They knew that the 3 shops were nominally owned by the 3 people, but in fact, Lu Ping paid the rent alone. Therefore, after Lu Ping went to Feiling Island, they hoped that Lu Ping would die on Feiling Island. In this way they could use some means to take over the 3 shops. Later, Lu Ping returned safely from Feiling Island. The father and son were disappointed, so they came up with another plan. They reported to the sect that Huangli Island's market square was becoming more and more prosperous. They hoped that the sect could take back all the shops that were rented out and send cultivators to manage them for the sect. Li Ziming was quite clever. He knew that the large shops on the island had powerful backers and weren't people he could afford to offend. In his report he only mentioned the scattered shops. These were small businesses of ordinary cultivators and wouldn't involve any major powers. His goal was naturally to deal with Lu Ping and the others. As for who would be sent to manage the shops after they were taken back, besides Li Ziming, who was currently in charge of Huangli Island, who else could it be? After Lu Ping heard about these matters from Hu Lili, he disdainfully smiled and said, "Let them be, there is no need to pay attention to them." Sure enough, after Li Ziming's report was submitted to Xianqi Island, Master Immortal Lu handed it over to Daoist Chu. Daoist Chu didn't even look at it and casually threw it away. Li Ziming's report disappeared. After Lu Ping returned to Xianqi Island, he gave all the jade slips about formations to Hu Lili as a gift. At the same time he also gave the Water Mist Pavilion's cultivator a formation plate and a magic tool. This made Hu Lili quite happy and she hurriedly brought these things back to her cave residence to study. As for Chen Lian, Lu Ping directly gave him some of the spiritual materials he obtained on Feiling Island as samples for him to study. This caused Chen Lian to look at Lu Ping in confusion and ask, "Did you kill people on Feiling Island and rob them?" This half-correct statement made Lu Ping quite depressed. He originally wanted to give Chen Lian a high-grade crafting furnace, but he decided to wait for now. Although Chen Lian's smithing skills weren't low, using a high-grade crafting furnace at the 2nd layer of the blood condensation realm was still a bit difficult. Moreover, people would covet it in the future. Chapter 108. The 12th of April was the first day of the blood condensation realm auction on Dikuan Island. Due to the lifting of the sea restriction, the scale of this auction was unprecedented. Not only did the number of cultivators increase, but a batch of precious spiritual materials obtained by the cultivators who went out to sea for the past half a year would also be auctioned off. This greatly enriched the contents of the auction. Originally, Lu Ping didn't plan to attend this auction. His North Sea wave listening technique was at a crucial point in refining his arcane energy. Moreover, Lu Ping didn't have any cultivation resources that he urgently needed. However, on the eve of the auction, Yao Yong, Du Feng, Shi Lingling, Zhong Jian, Mayu, Leng Qian, Niu Dezhuang, and Jing Jie all came to Huangli Island at the same time. Yao Yong and the others were naturally there to invite Lu Ping and Hu Lili to join them. Niu Dezhuang and Jing Jie, on the other hand, were there to look for Hu Lili. Feeling embarrassed, Lu Ping had no choice but to come out of seclusion. He called Chen Lian along and the 11 of them headed to Dikuan Island. The auction hall was already packed with people. The multi-treasure pavilion quickly expanded the auction hall's size, but it was still crowded. Lu Ping looked around and estimated that there were more than 1,000 blood condensation realm cultivators in the auction hall. Shi Lingling complained, "Why are there so many people? If only we were in the blood refining realm, we could go straight to the VIP rooms. But now that we're in the blood condensation realm, we can't do that. The adults in my family think that my cultivation is too low and won't give me an invitation. They want me to attend with them. I won't." Everyone knew that Shi Lingling's identity wasn't ordinary, and he was also the youngest among them. They smiled and listened to his complaints. Ever since the sea ban was lifted, everyone's cultivation base had improved. Not only had Lu Ping reached the 3rd layer blood condensation realm, but Yao Yong, Du Feng, and Zhong Jian had also successfully broken through to the 2nd layer. Although Ma Yu hadn't broken through to the 3rd layer, she was already at the peak of the second layer. Hu Lili broke through to the blood condensation realm later, but she was now at the peak of the first layer. Shi Lingling, Leng Qian, Zheng Jie and Yo Dezhuang had just advanced. Most of the cultivators attending the auction were at the mid-stage blood condensation realm and above. Early-stage blood condensation realm cultivators were rarely seen. After all, the auction was for elites or wealthy cultivators. Shi Lingling and the other early-stage blood condensation realm minor repairs cultivators naturally weren't noticed by the management. Just when everyone was about paying the entrance fee of 500 spirit stones and going to a corner of the auction, ping ping of the auction hall, the entrance and blood of the auction were sent. Of the auction. When the guard saw Lu Ping's invitation card, he ignored the fact that these cultivators were only early blood condensation realm cultivators and quickly said politely, "This is a VIP invitation card. You can enjoy the VIP room. Please follow me." Everyone looked at Lu Ping in surprise. Lu Ping shrugged and said, "I often buy things here. I'm familiar with the manager here, so I asked for an invitation." Shi Lingling giggled and said, "As if I'd believe you." The group followed the pavilion of multi-treasures guard to a teleportation array. The guard said, "This teleportation array is specially built to keep the identities of our VIPs secret. Your invitation is the activation talisman for the teleportation array. It can send you to any room you want. Even our multi-treasures pavilion doesn't know the room number of your room." Everyone was impressed by the multi-treasures pavilion's meticulousness. When the 11 of them arrived at the teleportation array, the invitation in Lu Ping's hand flashed. In the blink of an eye they appeared in room 19. Through the room, they could see the huge auction hall filled with thousands of blood condensation cultivators. After everyone found their seats, the stone table in the middle of the room suddenly flashed and 11 jade teacups appeared on it. Green smoke rose from the teacups. These were the cloud-opening tea that Lu Ping used to serve Hu Lili. At first, everyone was not used to this kind of setting, especially when Lu Ping had an invitation. Everyone was curious about his identity. Unknowingly, Lu Ping seemed to have become a stranger in their eyes. Even a simple and honest person like Yo Dezhuang was very reserved in this room. Hu Lili giggled and said, "This should be the trading platform used by the auction hall. After a cultivator makes a bid, they can place their spirit stones on this small teleportation platform. After the auction house receives the spirit stones, the items won by the cultivator will be sent to the room through the teleportation platform." As Hu Lili spoke, she passed the tea to everyone in the room. Hu Lili was knowledgeable and had a glib tongue. She was the best at adjusting the atmosphere. After a while, everyone in the room was chatting and laughing. Soon they forgot about the invitation. Even Yo Dezhuang, Zheng Jie and Chen Lian, the 3 new cultivators, quickly became familiar with each other. Actually, Lu Ping didn't have any special status. It was just that he had a record of spending money at the auction when he was still in the blood refining realm. After he entered the blood condensation realm, he had a few large transactions with the store of bountiful treasures. Steward Jia, who was in charge of his transactions, valued him very much and gave him an invitation. However, this invitation involved Xianling Sect's Qiao Shiping's 3 condensed blood pearls, so it wasn't convenient for Lu Ping to explain. The auction soon announced the start of the auction. Everyone in the room was attracted by the items that were going to be auctioned. Only Lu Ping didn't pay much attention to these things. He quietly cultivated in the room, condensing the arcane energy of the North Sea wave listening technique. At the same time he opened the spirit beast pouch. 3 small snakes, each about a foot long with crystal clear surfaces, slithered out and coiled around Lu Ping's right hand. These 3 little snakes were hatched from Lu Ping's 3 green sea snake eggs. During the hatching process, Lu Ping had been using his arcane energy to strengthen the egg's vitality and shorten the hatching process. Therefore, the 3 little snakes were very familiar with and infatuated with Lu Ping's aura. They treated Lu Ping like their own parents. The 3 little snakes were green in color, blue in color and white in color. Lu Ping named them Lu Bai, Lu Hai, and Lu Ling respectively, taking the meaning of green sea snake. When everyone in the room saw that Lu Ping had raised 3 snakes as spirit beast pets, a few ladies even ridiculed Lu Ping's bad taste for keeping such gloomy and terrifying demon beasts as spirit beasts. When everyone saw the 3 beautiful, crystal-like little snakes, they began to be amazed at the cuteness of the 3 spirit snakes. However, everyone had a natural fear of snakes, so they only looked at them from afar and didn't touch them. The young green sea snakes were not much different from ordinary snake demons. Therefore, among the crowd, Even Hu Lili didn't realize that these three little snakes were the famous green sea snakes among the demon beasts. Lu Ping fed the three spirit snakes 3 pills that he had specially refined for them. He also fed them some of the young demon beast meat that he bought from a cultivator in the buffer zone. Seeing that the 3 little snakes were full and didn't move, Lu Ping kept them into his spirit beast pouch. At this time, the auction house was auctioning a high-grade flying sword. Lu Ping took a look and found that it was inferior to his soaring sword, so he felt a little disdainful. However, Hu Lili and the others were watching with great interest. 6,200 spirit stones. This fellow Taoist has bid 6,200 spirit stones. Are there any other fellow Taoists present who would like to bid? This is a high-grade fire attribute flying sword that was refined using high-grade spiritual material, fire iron. It's of high quality and is the first choice for blood condensation cultivators who cultivate fire attribute cultivation techniques. The auctioneer was Manager Jia, whom Lu Ping was familiar with. Yao Yong was quite interested in this flying sword. However, he was already Enlightened Master Chu Xuanqing's disciple. Enlightened Master Chu had already promised to reward him with a fire attribute high-grade magic artifact after he advanced to the mid-stage blood condensation realm. That was why he didn't participate in the auction. After Manager Jia's vigorous promotion, the flying sword was finally sold for 7,000 spirit stones. The next item is a top-grade pill suitable for early-stage blood condensation cultivators, the Green Miracle Pill. I believe that even if you haven't seen it before, you should have heard of it. It's one of the top-grade cultivation pills for early-stage blood condensation cultivators. Every pill is 50% more effective than an ordinary early-stage blood condensation cultivator's cultivation pill. I won't say anything else. 5 bottles of Green Miracle pills will be auctioned together. The starting price is 6,000 spirit stones, and each increment must be no less than 100 spirit stones. Let's start the bidding now. As soon as Manager Jia finished speaking, Lu Ping's eyes lit up. This top-grade pill was exactly what he needed right now. Which early-stage blood condensation cultivator wouldn't drool over such a pill? Following the auctioneer's voice, the price of the 5 bottles of Green Miracle pills was raised to 8,000 spirit stones. This price caused many early blood condensation cultivators to shrink back. 8,500 spirit stones. Lu Ping's bid once again shocked everyone in the private room. Hu Lili exclaimed, "Why do you need so many? Didn't you get quite a lot of pills on Failing Island? Besides, you're already at the 3rd layer of the blood condensation realm. The pills you have should be enough for you to reach the mid-stage blood condensation realm." Shi Lingling, Ma Yu, and the rest knew that Lu Ping had offended the sex pill refinement master at Tianling Mountain. Hu Lili had been on Huangli Island for a long time, so she didn't have much information. After listening to Shi Lingling and the rest's explanation, she couldn't help but blame Lu Ping for not knowing how to be patient. In fact, Lu Ping wasn't just preparing for the possibility of trouble from the sex pill refinement master. Lu Ping was practicing the North Sea wave listening technique again. He needed a large amount of pills to speed up the conversion and condensation of his arcane energy. After everyone knew the reason, they no longer tried to stop Lu Ping from bidding. In the end, the Green Miracle pills were won by Lu Ping for 9,400 spirit stones. Lu Ping placed an interspatial pouch filled with spirit stones on the teleportation platform. Not long after the interspatial pouch disappeared, 5 exquisite jade bottles appeared on the teleportation platform. Lu Ping picked up the jade bottles, opened them, and admired the green medicinal pellets inside. His face lit up with joy. After the Green Miracle pills, the mid-stage and late-stage blood condensation realm cultivation pills were auctioned. When the crowd heard the bids going up to 10,000 spirit stones, they no longer felt that it was extravagant for Lu Ping to spend 9,000 spirit stones on the pills. At this moment, Manager Jia's smile suddenly disappeared. He said solemnly, "Everyone, as we all know, blood condensation cultivators need to replenish their bloodline before they can break through the bottleneck of the middle and late stages of the blood condensation realm. Therefore, every cultivator needs to find a bloodline that is compatible with their foundation bloodline and the cultivation technique they are cultivating." Chapter 109. Manager Jia's calm and collected speech attracted the attention of most of the cultivators present. He continued, "There are generally 3 ways to replenish one's bloodline. The first way is to purchase a bloodline of the same attribute from a cultivator of the same level, which was expelled during the hemolysis process. However, it takes a lot of time and transcendence energy to replenish the transcendence energy within the bloodline. The second way is to concoct a barrier-breaking pill from a cultivator of the same attribute with various rare spirit herbs. This way the recovery time of the bloodline will be greatly reduced. The third way is the most convenient and most effective. It is to directly obtain a hemolytic bead from a cultivator of the same attribute and fuse it with the transcendence energy within the bloodline. However, this method is the most difficult to achieve. Not only does it require a life and death battle between the cultivator and the demonic beast, both cultivators and demonic beasts will shatter the space in their cores before they die, causing the condensed blood pearl to collapse. Therefore, obtaining a condensed blood pearl is extremely difficult. Furthermore, the condensed blood pearl must be of the same attribute as the cultivator. Manager Jia saw that everyone was listening to him attentively. His tone changed and he continued, "However, even though it is extremely difficult to obtain a condensed blood pearl, we have managed to obtain several condensed blood pearls of different attributes and cultivation levels through various channels. Fellow Taoists, please take a look and bid for them." Amidst the gasps of the cultivators in the auction hall, a young female cultivator brought a brocade box to the hands of the auctioneer. When the box was opened, 3 condensed blood pearls the size of soybeans could be seen. Manager Jia said, "3 condensed blood pearls of the Peng bloodline, suitable for cultivators of the third layer of the blood condensation realm who have Peng bloodlines of wind, water, or dual attributes to break through to the early stage of the blood condensation realm. The starting price is 15,000 spirit stones. Each increment must be no less than 500 spirit stones. Everyone please place your bids." Just as Manager Jia finished speaking, the cultivators in the auction hall began to shout out their bids. 16,000 spirit stones, 17,000 spirit stones, 18,000 spirit stones, I'll take it. These 3 condensed blood beads were the condensed blood beads that Lu Ping had entrusted the multi-treasure pavilion to auction off from Qiao Shiping. Lu Ping didn't expect an early blood refining realm condensed blood bead to drive the cultivators into such a frenzy. He stared blankly at the auction. Shi Lingling and the others, on the other hand, were admiring the bids and the red-faced expressions of the cultivators in the auction hall. For them, the most important thing in this auction was to increase their knowledge, not to participate in the auction. Even with their financial resources, they could not participate in it. Take Hu Lili for example. In terms of knowledge, no one in the private room could compare to her. But when it came to real treasures and spirit materials, Hu Lili's knowledge came from jade scrolls and books, while Lu Ping's knowledge came from the real thing. Thus, even though Hu Lili already knew the items in the auction hall, she still couldn't take her eyes off them. On the other hand, Lu Ping had long lost interest in the auction hall. In the end, the 3 condensed blood pearls were won by a cultivator in a private room for 21,000 spirit stones. Half an hour later, the transportation platform in room 19 flashed, and a bag of spirit stones appeared on it. Lu Ping took the bag and looked at it. Then he nonchalantly transferred the spirit stones inside into his storage ring. The auction continued. 2 more condensed blood pearls were auctioned off. The first was for 2 4th-layer condensed blood pearls, which were even more ideal for breaking through to the mid-blood condensation realm than 3rd-layer condensed blood pearls. They were sold for a high price of 28,000 spirit stones. The second auction was for 6 6th-layer condensed blood pearls. They were sold to a cultivator in the first private room for a whopping price of 66,000 spirit stones. This made Shi Lingling and the others exclaim in admiration. Manager Jia of the Bountiful Treasures Pavilion inadvertently revealed to the crowd that some of the condensed blood pearls came from the demon territory after the sea restrictions were lifted. This caused a huge commotion among the cultivators. Lu Ping and the others could already imagine that after the auction, the number of cultivators entering the demon territory would reach a new peak. As expected, the following items in the auction were all specialties from the demon territory. Large quantities of high-quality skin, tendons, bones, meat and blood from mid and late blood condensation realm demonic beasts were auctioned off. The unique spirit herbs, spirit materials and spirit ores from the demon territory also shocked the cultivators. Under Manager Jia's instigation, the demon territory had become a paradise for cultivators to strike it rich. They selectively ignored the dangers of the demon territory. Fellow Taoists, the next auction item is a high-grade defensive magic artifact. As the manager spoke, he took a light blue shield from the hands of a young female cultivator beside him. He then introduced, This water-repellent shield was refined using the condensed blood bead of a demon beast in the sea and the high-grade water attribute spirit material, glazed crystal iron. It's a rare high-quality high-grade defensive magic tool, and it can give the cultivator using it a true sense of security. Lu Ping ignored Manager Jia's incessant introduction and asked Chen Lian directly, "What do you think of this magic artifact?" When Chen Lian heard Lu Ping's question, he knew that Lu Ping lacked a defensive magic artifact. After listening to Manager Jia's introduction, he was probably tempted. Chen Lian carefully looked at the water-repellent shield in Manager Jia's hands and said with a hint of regret, "This magic artifact is not bad among high-grade magic artifacts. However, due to the forging method, it will be difficult to upgrade it to a top-grade magic artifact in the future." Lu Ping nodded and said, "It's fine if it can't be upgraded. It's just a transition anyway. With a tool refiner like you by my side, do I have to worry about not having a top-grade magic artifact in the future?" Chen Lian hurriedly shook his head and said, "Don't. Although I know the forging method for top-grade magic artifacts, with my current second-layer blood condensation realm cultivation, it will be difficult for me to forge high-grade magic artifacts. If you want to forge a top-grade magic artifact, you should look for my old man." Lu Ping smiled and said, "I can't use top-grade mystic instruments yet. But when I'm able to use top-grade mystic instruments, maybe you, Great Blacksmith Chen, won't be able to refine top-grade mystic instruments anymore." Chen Lian curled his lips and said, "With your cultivation speed, I'm afraid that by the time you reach the late blood condensation realm, I'll be lucky if I can reach the mid-blood condensation realm." Chen Lian's words immediately resonated with everyone in the private room. They all criticized Lu Ping's unimaginable cultivation speed and how he left his friends far behind. Zhong Jian said, "I don't know how you cultivate, but not only is your cultivation speed fast, your spiritual energy is also strong. You can already use high-grade magic artifacts with ease at the third layer of the blood condensation realm. I'm afraid that we will only be able to use high-grade magic artifacts normally after we reach the mid-blood condensation realm." Everyone felt the same way. Lu Ping only smiled silently. Others didn't know that he had already changed his cultivation technique to the North Sea wave listening technique. In the future, his cultivation speed would probably be greatly reduced and he would fall behind others. Of course, Lu Ping was also confident that even if his cultivation fell behind others, his strength wouldn't decrease. Instead, it would increase by a lot. The water-repellent shield started with a starting price of 5,000 spirit stones. The minimum requirement for a high-grade magic artifact was around 3,000 spirit stones. Defensive magic artifacts were naturally more expensive. However, even though the water-repellent shield was of good quality, it could no longer be improved. Hence, the starting price was only 5,000 spirit stones. In the blink of an eye, the bidding price had already risen to 8,000 spirit stones. Lu Ping thought for a moment and directly called out a bid of 9,000 spirit stones. After Lu Ping's bid came out, the bidding quieted down. When someone else called out another bid, the number of people had already decreased by more than half. Clearly, the identity of the cultivator in the private room still made the cultivators in the private room apprehensive. 9,200 spirit stones. Lu Ping looked at the middle of the private room and saw a middle-aged cultivator in the mid-blood condensation realm. Who else could it be other than Li Ziming? Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. Lu Ping smiled silently. Hu Lili was observing Lu Ping's expression. When she saw the change in his expression, she also looked at the middle of the private room and smiled. What a coincidence. Everyone asked for the reason, and Hu Lili told them about the incident between the Li family and Lu Ping on Huangli Island. Yao Yong muttered, "The Li family is considered a medium-sized dependent family in Jinling. It's said that they have 2 core forging realm cultivators. Junior martial brother, you have to be careful in the future. Don't fall into the schemes of despicable people." Shi Lingling said disdainfully, "It's just a small Li family. What can they do to an inner disciple of our sect? This junior martial brother Li Cheng is also a little famous in the group. His cultivation speed isn't slow either. I heard that he's about to break through to the blood condensation realm, but he's so narrow-minded. It's just a ranking competition. Why bother about it until now?" Everyone couldn't help but look at each other with a bitter smile. From Shi Lingling's usual behavior, everyone could tell that her status in the sect was not simple. Moreover, she was young and inexperienced. She could ignore the Li clan, but the others had to consider the weight of the Li clan's 2 core forging enlightened masters. Lu Ping looked at Li Ziming's expressionless bid and said calmly, 9,500 spirit stones. Li Ziming paused for a moment as if he was calculating something, and then hesitantly quoted a price of 9,600 spirit stones. Everyone could tell from his tone that Li Ziming's price had reached the limit. Lu Ping didn't hesitate to increase the bid by 10,000 spirit stones. Li Ziming heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Lu Ping frowned and saw Li Ziming turn around to look at Lu Ping's private room. Li Ziming's expression revealed a hint of joy, surprise, mockery, and even a hint of pride. Hu Lili had been paying attention to the scene since Lu Ping and Li Ziming started fighting. She also saw Li Ziming's expression, so she turned to look at Lu Ping. Lu Ping smiled helplessly at her. I'm afraid we fell into his trap. Hu Lili nodded. It should be the Li family's own magic tool. Everyone quickly asked for the reason. After listening to Hu Lili's explanation, they all said it was a pity and scolded Li Ziming for being cunning. Lu Ping didn't take it to heart. This kind of method wasn't despicable. If it was his own item being auctioned, he would have raised the price several times. Profit was always like this. After a while, Lu Ping paid the spirit stones and received the water-repellent shield. Chen Lian held it in his hand and inspected it. Although the price is a bit high, the quality of this magic tool is not bad. 10,000 spirit stones is not a loss. Chapter 110. Everyone, the next item to be auctioned is a batch of high-quality spirit ores. First, I'll bring 100 caddies of refined high-grade spirit material, spirit impassive soil. Chen Lian heard about the spirit impassive soil and smiled at Lu Ping. It's our turn. Lu Ping laughed and Hu Lili asked, where did you get the spirit impassive soil? How come I don't know about it? Chen Lian said, Junior Marshal Brother Lu found some spirit impassive soil ores, and I helped him refine it. There's quite a lot of it, so I'm planning to auction some. Shi Lingling rolled her eyes at Lu Ping and said, there's quite a lot of good stuff. Everyone else felt the same way. Manager Jia continued to introduce, this 100 caddies of refined spirit impassive soil is refined from 1,000 caddies of spirit impassive soil ores. Through the method of refining, the person who refined it has a good foundation in tool refining. This 100 caddies of refined spirit impassive soil is also very pure, and it's a good material for refining high-grade earth attribute defensive magic tools. The starting price is 4,000 spirit stones, and each increment is no less than 100 spirit stones. Everyone please bid. Spirit impassive soil was a type of spirit or commonly used to refine earth attribute defensive magic tools. The quality of defensive magic tools made from it was also quite high. Adding another 100 caddies of spirit impassive soil was enough to refine 2 high-grade magic tools. Therefore, it attracted many cultivators to bid, and the price quickly rose from 4,000 to 7,000 spirit stones. At this moment, Chen Lian suddenly said, oh no! Everyone was shocked and quickly asked what was going on. Chen Lian smiled bitterly, one of the cultivators bidding below is my father. Lu Ping heard this and looked at the red-faced elder who just bid 7,200 spirit stones. Who else could it be but Old Chen? Coincidentally, one of the cultivators bidding against Old Chen was Li Ziming, the one who accidentally tricked Lu Ping with the water-repellent shield. At this moment, Chen Lian helplessly smiled at Lu Ping and said, if my father knows that we earned his spirit stones, he'll definitely think of a way to get back at us. Everyone found it funny. This time it was a coincidence. Lu Ping gestured for them to calm down. Next, he brought out the VIP invitation card from the Bountiful Treasures Pavilion and said a few words into it. Next, he formed a few hand seals and light flashed out from the surface of the invitation card. As everyone was wondering what Lu Ping was doing, one of the attendants from the Bountiful Treasures Pavilion walked over to Elder Chen's seat and said something. Elder Chen then cast a surprised glance at the private room where Lu Ping and the others were seated. After that, he sat down and stopped bidding. Shi Lingling and the others all asked Lu Ping what was going on. Lu Ping held the invitation in his hand and said, it's nothing much. This invitation can be used as a voice transmission talisman to communicate with the Bountiful Treasures Pavilion at any time during the auction. It's just a privilege of being a VIP. But Chen Lian said, do you still have spirit ash soil? Otherwise, I'm afraid it'll be hard to explain to my old man. Lu Ping smiled and said, don't worry, I still have some. At this time, Li Ziming's bid had already reached 7,500 spirit stones. There were only a few cultivators competing with him. Lu Ping suddenly said, "I bid 7,600 spirit stones." Everyone in the private room looked at Lu Ping in surprise. Naturally, they knew that Lu Ping wanted to take revenge for Li Ziming's scheme. Jing Jie, who hadn't spoken up until now, suddenly said, "This debt of 6 months can be repaid quickly." Hu Lili was afraid that Lu Ping would misunderstand. Niu Dezhuang scratched his head and said, This Li guy is a good-for-nothing. He deserves to be screwed over this time." Lu Ping turned his head and smiled at Niu Dezhuang. He continued to observe Li Ziming's bid. Li Ziming had obviously been eyeing this 100 gene of spirit ash soil for a long time. He had already raised his bid to 8,000 spirit stones. Qin Lian reminded, "That's about it. 8,000 spirit stones should be the limit of this 100 gene of spirit ash soil. Any higher and it'll scare people away." Lu Ping pondered for a moment and agreed with Chen Lian's suggestion. At this time Old Man Qin suddenly shouted, 8,100 spirit stones. Qin Lian anxiously said, "What's going on? Why is this old man going at it again? Didn't I tell him not to bid?" Lu Ping looked at Old Man Chen's indifferent face and said, "Don't worry. The old man must have discovered something. Otherwise, with his experience, why would he do something he's not sure of?" Only then did Qin Lian calm down. He understood that his old man was above him in both experience and other aspects. Why would he do something irrational for no reason? Sure enough, Li Ziming, who was calm at first, became slightly annoyed when he heard Old Man Chen's bid. He turned his head and glanced at Old Man Qin. Obviously, Li Ziming knew Old Man Qin, one of the top blacksmiths on Dikuan Island. He knew that Old Man Chen's background was not simple. Li Ziming fiercely turned his head back and raised the bid to 8,500 spirit stones. Everyone praised the old man's skill. Lu Ping pondered for a moment and said to Chen Lian, "Old man won't be troubled by the Li clan because of this, right?" Chen Lian indifferently said, "Why would they? It's natural for blacksmiths to bid for blacksmithing materials. Even if they want to cause trouble, our Qin clan will not be afraid of them." Lu Ping knew that Chen Lian's clan was backed by a Jinling core forging enlightened master. Their background was probably even thicker than the Li clan's. Half an hour later, the 8,000 spirit stones were transferred to the private room. Chen Lian happily took out 4,000 spirit stones. Lu Ping had 100,000 spirit stones now, so 4,000 spirit stones was nothing to him. But for early blood condensation realm cultivators like Chen Lian, it was not a small fortune. After a few spirit materials were auctioned off, Manager Jiao brought out another spirit material and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the next item on display is a top-grade spirit material, deep-sea silver iron. This top-grade spirit material was obtained by a cultivator while exploring the outer sea. I have to say, after the sea restriction was lifted, the outer sea became a paradise for adventuring cultivators. Even a top-grade spirit material like this is often brought to the bountiful treasure pavilion by cultivators to be sold. Top-grade spiritual material, deep-sea silver iron. The starting price is 10,000 spirit stones, and each increment must be no less than 500 spirit stones. Please bid." Chen Lian suddenly said excitedly, "Little Lu, you have to get this deep-sea silver iron. It will be very useful for your high-grade magic artifact, Landslide." Lu Ping said doubtfully, "This deep-sea silver iron is also a top-grade spiritual material with the same attribute as the deep-sea cold iron. I already have the deep-sea cold iron, so I don't need this deep-sea silver iron." Chen Lian still said excitedly, "It's not that simple. This time Multi-Treasure Pavilion really made a mistake." Chen Lian, who was dancing with joy, ignored the astonishment of the people in the private room and said, "Top-grade spirit materials are also divided into grades. The so-called top-grade spirit materials are only used to refine top-grade magic tools, allowing the magic tool to have the possibility of becoming a magic treasure. And this possibility is also divided into different grades." Chen Lian excitedly walked back and forth in the private room, then explained to the crowd, "Generally speaking, top-grade spiritual materials can be divided into 3 grades. Grade 1 spiritual materials are the most common of top-grade spiritual materials, like deep-sea cold iron, deep-sea silver iron, and other natural minerals. Grade 2 spiritual materials are natural minerals that have been purified by external forces, and their quality has improved and mutated. For example, a 1,000-year-old peach wood is only a grade 1 top-grade spiritual material. If a 1,000-year-old peach wood is still able to grow after being struck by lightning, it will be a grade 2 top-grade spiritual material. After being used to forge magic artifacts, Its quality will be much higher than a top-grade magic artifact made from a grade 1 spiritual material. Hearing this, Lu Ping's heart stirred. Among the spiritual materials he had obtained in the secret room of the refining hall on Fei Ling Island, there was 1,000-year-old lightning-struck peach wood. Chen Lian's explanation pulled Lu Ping back from his thoughts. Grade 3 spiritual materials are even more mystical. They are spiritual materials condensed from spiritual objects that have lost their spirituality and degenerated. They are the highest grade of top-grade spiritual materials, and also the best choice for forging magic artifacts. Their rarity is only below that of spiritual objects. Shi Lingling impatiently said, "You've been talking for so long, what does it have to do with the spiritual material on the stage? Right now the bidding price has reached nearly 20,000 spirit stones, and your father is also bidding." Chen Lian looked at the crowd and saw that Elder Chen was also bidding, so he breathed a sigh of relief and continued, "I'm saying all this to tell everyone that this piece of deep-sea cold iron is not an ordinary grade 1 top-grade spiritual material, but a type of top-grade 2 top-grade spiritual material that has mutated due to external forces." Chen Lian turned to look at Lu Ping and said, "Originally, whether you use deep-sea cold iron or deep-sea cold iron to upgrade your landslide to a top-grade magic artifact, the difference is not too big. But if you use this kind of mutated deep-sea cold iron to upgrade your landslide, not only will it be more powerful, but when you advance to the core forging stage in the future, it will not be difficult for you to upgrade it to a magic artifact." Lu Ping was very tempted to hear this, but at this time the auction was still going on. Elder Chen obviously recognized that this piece of deep-sea cold iron was not an ordinary top-grade spiritual material, so he was still bidding at a moderate pace. So, Lu Ping was not in a hurry and asked, "How can you be sure that this piece of deep-sea cold iron is not an ordinary deep-sea cold iron, but a type of mutated deep-sea cold iron?" Chen Lian smiled proudly and said, "When my father helped enlightened Yan Nanfei condense a magic artifact, he once saw this kind of mutated deep-sea cold iron. At that time, that piece of deep-sea cold iron was immersed in a kind of mysterious spirit water of heaven and earth for a long time, which caused the mutation. At that time, enlightened Yan Nanfei also used that mysterious spirit water to successfully break through the core forging stage and enter the fourth forging stage." Lu Ping knew that enlightened Yan Nanfei was the person that Elder Chen saved in the past, and he was the biggest backer behind the Chen family, as well as one of the island's enlightened masters. At this time, the bidding price of the deep-sea cold iron had reached 30,000 spirit stones, which was already the limit of ordinary top-grade spiritual materials. At this time, Elder Chen was also looking at the bidding price and frowning. Chen Lian saw his father's expression and turned to Lu Ping and said, "It seems that there are other people in the auction hall who can recognize the value of this item." "I'm afraid that my father only has so many spirit stones in his hands. If the price is higher, my father will not be able to afford it." Lu Ping nodded and called a price that once again made everyone in the private room dumbfounded, 40,000 spirit stones. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.